Chapter 853. Chapter 853. Who said I was going to leave? What is your purpose of being placed here? Gustav asked, while squinting his eyes in suspicion. Death. Tabitha stated. Death. Gustav stated with a confused tone. You heard me the first time, kid. Death. Now that you have arrived here, I can't let you leave this place alive. Tabitha stated as he breathed out, causing the wind to blast out of his nostrils intensely, which caused Gustav's hair to blow backward. To his surprise, Gustav still stood there with his expression unchanging as he kept staring at Tabitha. Are you not scared? I said you will die here. Why do you show no fear? Tabitha voiced out with a tone of disbelief. Stop messing around. You can't harm me. Why are you here? What am I supposed to do to get to the last floor? Gustav voiced out with a calm look. Humph. Although I cannot harm you just as you have said, and oh, one was truly supposed to reach this level, Tabitha revealed once more. I was placed here as a sentence for a crime I committed long ago. I may be a mixed breed, but I am no unintelligible, one like the others you have come into contact with in the past. That is why instead of killing me, Jack placed me here for one purpose, Tabitha added. Jack placed him here? Gustav thought internally with a look of suspicion. He wondered what the backstory behind all this was. Not only am I imprisoned here, but I am also the guardian of this floor, and the one who controls the space changes in the dungeon. You cannot move on to the next floor without my input. Although no one was ever meant to get to this floor, or the last protocols were already put in place to handle situations such as this. With that being said, you can only move to the next floor by passing my test, Tabitha stated. What test? Gustav asked. You have to answer 3 questions correctly, to move to the next floor, Tabitha answered. That's it? Just 3 questions? Gustav sounded a bit surprised, considering he expected a more complex task. Yes, just 3 questions, but you would be foolish to underestimate the difficulty because my knowledge is vast, Tabitha voiced out with a slightly scornful look upon seeing Gustav's expression. Sure. Let's get this over with, Gustav said with an unbothered expression. Humph. First question, Tabitha said while breathing out a gust of wind from his nostrils. How was the first mixed breed to ever exist formed? Tabitha asked with a slight grin. This was a tricky question, considering the mixed breeds had existed for thousands of years, and there had been speculations on whether Slarkovs mated with Earth animals to form the first mixed breed, or the energy pollution from the meteors that fell down to Earth caused the mutation. There were also speculations that both these theories were true, but it was unknown which one actually caused the first mixed breed to walk the Earth. The knowledge had been lost to time, and now only speculations existed. It would be difficult to give the right answer, since one could only make guesses based on these speculations. Gustav could guess Tabitha knew the right answer because he had been around for a long time. Probably only those who had been around for long knew the right answer. Well, mixed bloods existed before mixed breeds did so. The first mixed breed to ever exist was a mixed blood, whose bloodline energy spiraled out of control, turning them into a beast, Gustav voiced out. Tabitha's eyes widened slightly as he heard that answer. How did you? Judging by his reaction, Gustav could guess that he answered correctly. I thought you said this was going to be very difficult, Gustav voiced out with a smug look. Humph. I am sure you must have guessed this one correctly. The next question won't be so easy, Tabitha stated with a tone of certainty. Sure, let's hear it, Gustav responded. Next question. How many other intelligent mixed breeds exist besides me? Tabitha asked with a slight grin. By intelligent do you mean others that can speak and mimic human behavioral patterns, or just having higher intelligence than that of normal mixed breeds? Gustav asked with a serious look. If it was the latter, Gustav was sure of being able to answer, considering there were not a lot of mixed breeds who had better intelligence than the average mixed breeds. The former, Tabitha answered. Well, shit, Gustav cussed internally. He had never met another mixed breed that could speak. Neither had he heard before that there were mixed breeds capable of speaking. He knew there were a few mixed breeds who had high intelligence opposite to that of normal beasts, but they did not speak. They would be able to understand human gestures and words, but speaking, it was a different thing entirely. This question was truly a difficult one, as Gustav didn't know whether Tabitha was the only mixed breed who was capable of this or not. This made him wonder why such information would be kept hidden from the world, since there was no research he hadn't already done on mixed breeds already. It was obvious that such a thing was kept under the wraps. Well, there's no rule that states I can seek for answers from another source, Gustav suddenly voiced out. Indeed, there is no rule like that, but you can't seek for answers because the moment you leave this place, you will never be allowed on this floor again. So you can't leave, Tabitha stated with a light gruff. Who said I was going to leave? A smirk appeared on Gustav's face as he voiced out. Ha! A suspicious feeling arose from within Tabitha as he heard Gustav say this. He wondered what Gustav meant, but after saying that, Gustav didn't speak for some time. Instead, he closed his eyes. What is he up to? Tabitha wondered. Within a well-structured office, a group of guards stood in front of a lady clad in high-standard MBO uniform. Did you say a group already scaled the 42nd floor? She asked with a look of astonishment. Chapter 854. Chapter 854. Economy? Yes, Commander Cilia. It was reported by a group who is currently missing a member. They never met the group responsible, but they spotted the floor cleared. One of the guards voiced out. We have to get down there now. Commander Cilia voiced out with a tone of urgency. Understood. The guards voiced out as they stormed out of the office with Commander Cilia. Let's hope they haven't met Tabitha yet, or drastic measures will have to be taken, Commander Cilia said internally. Although she was worried, she wasn't too bothered because the floors got way more difficult the lower one went. Just because the so-called group managed to scale the 42nd floor, it doesn't mean they would be able to scale the 43rd and 44th floor. Even if they could, Commander Cilia and the guards felt it would take a lot of time, and less than 30 minutes had gone by since they received the information. Do we have any information on the cadets in this group, or any speculations on who they could be? Commander Cilia asked as they made their way to the dungeon. The guards responded with a no, and mentioned once again that there had been no sightings whatsoever, and even the scene left no clues as to what other abilities were used beside flames. This made Commander Cilia to think deeply as she recalled the strongest flame user among the final years. Unfortunately, this person was below the top 50s on the final years ranking, so she didn't believe he was capable of accomplishing such. There was no claim of any other clues besides ashes, so everyone believed it had to be flames, but then things didn't add up the more Commander Cilia thought of it. They had no idea Gustav was responsible for all that by himself. The power of Yarki gave him the ability to disintegrate anyone within the range that had already fallen under the domination of its power. With the experiment of how power it was that Gustav had carried out, he now knew kilo-ranked mixed bloods could fall under the effect of his Yarki. This gave him a sense of invisibility, but he knew not to use Yarki casually. Only when he found himself in a precarious situation would he activate it. Gustav was still interested in testing out Yarki to find out its current limit of dominance, but there was no way for him to do that due to the fact that the strength of the mixed breeds in the dungeon was not beyond the kilo rank. He wasn't even sure if at peak kilo ranks could be affected, but if he wanted to confirm whether or not they'd be, he would have to try it on one of the instructors. Gustav wasn't interested in revealing that he had such ability, so he had discarded such thoughts from his mind. Using it against Tabitha, too, was out of the question because not only was Tabitha immensely more powerful than even the Delta rank, he was not meant to battle him to get to the next floor. In a few more minutes, Commander Cilia and the guards had arrived at the dungeon and were headed towards the bottommost part of it with speed. How did you get the answer? Tabitha voiced out with a surprised tone. I told you I was going to employ the help of another source, Gustav responded with a light snicker. Tabitha had a look of astonishment, wondering how Gustav could employ the help of another souse while still in here. Even if he had the ability to communicate with people outside the dungeon or had a communication tool, such devices or abilities would not work here. What Tabitha didn't know was the other source Gustav had contacted lived within him. The system had made inquiry on this, once more hacking into the database of the MBO to find the answer to this specific question. The system was not aware of every secret in the universe and on Earth. Unless it decided to research on a particular subject, it would also remain clueless to some things, which was why it was unaware of the existence of intelligent mixed breeds on this level. There happened to be 3 more mixed breeds like Tabitha currently in existence, but they were scattered across the world in remote and hidden locations. Tabitha stared at Gustav, once more scrutinizing him. He could sense that this kid was special in some kind of way which had him in deep thought. He will die if he gets to the next level, and he's not the one. But this kid is special. I should try my best to make sure he fails here, so he can head back to the surface. It would be a huge loss on the MBO's part if they lost someone like this, Tabitha thought with look of generosity. Last question, Gustav voiced out after noticing Tabitha had been quiet for some time. Oh, last question. If you lose this one, you shall be casted out and never have access to this level again, Tabitha stated with a strong tone. Yeah, wouldn't you like that? Gustav said with his eyes dropped. Humph, I am sure you're unaware of this one. Here goes. Who created the economy? Tabitha asked with a smug look. Economy? What's that? Gustav voiced out with a look of confusion. Oh, I don't know. The question is for you, not me, Tabitha said with a light chuckle. Minutes went by, and Gustav still hadn't responded. Tabitha had a relieved look, as felt Gustav would finally lose a question and get sent out. Yes, so it's precisely where we are right now, but that's what it's really called. He's trying to confuse you because the name is not known, the system voiced in Gustav's head. Oh, I see. Gustav responded internally. He seemed to have been chatting with this system all this time. The economy was created by Mac. Gustav suddenly voiced out. Oh, are you sure about this answer? Tabitha asked with an inexplicable look. Chapter 855. Chapter 855. The last floor, that tone won't fool me, Tabitha. I know that economy is also the dungeon. Jack and Mac created this whole camp with their abilities, and Mac ability is what could have created this whole dungeon, Gustav explained. Tabitha had a look of shock on his face again, as Gustav explained everything, calling it the original name. Economy was how he intended to confuse Gustav, but he didn't expect that not only would Gustav figure it out, but he would also know the exact person among the duo who created this particular space within the camp. Oh, correct, Tabitha voiced out with a tone of defeat. A smirk appeared on Gustav's face after hearing that. You have answered all 3 questions completely, so I have no choice but to give you access to the next floor. Tabitha voiced out and paused briefly. Thighs, a bright door-sized opening suddenly appeared by the side, it glazing with light which made it obvious that it was a spatial gateway that would lead to different place. Ooh, but kid, I advise you not to go into that last floor because what is down there will end you, Tabitha said with a strong tone of warning. What is down there? Gustav asked. I am not allowed to say, but only the right one can go in and survive. Any other person will die. You're a talented kid. Don't waste your life like this, Tabitha advised once more. Interesting. Thank you, but I'll have to see for myself, Gustav voiced out as he slowly walked towards the spatial door, while he squinted his eyes with a serious look. Tabitha sighed as he watched Gustav walk towards the opening. He already knew Gustav was a hard-headed kid since they began speaking, so he kind of expected this. He could only hope Gustav would be okay. As Gustav arrived at the opening, another opening appeared far behind this large space. Commander Cilia and the guards were arriving at the same time and spotted Gustav walking into the opening from thousands of feet away. "Stop him! Tabitha, stop him!" she yelled out as she sped forward as quickly as she could. Tabitha spotted them also at this time, but it was all too late. In the next instant, Gustav walked into the opening, and it disappeared before Commander Cilia could arrive at the altar area. Bam! She landed in front of Tabitha and looked up at him. "Why did you let him go in?" she voiced out with an immense look of worry. He answered the 3 questions correctly. Tabitha answered truthfully. "What?" "Show me footages of the last 30 minutes, Commander Cilia commanded with a look of disbelief. "Humph, yes you wish." Tabitha sounded disgruntled as he responded. A small square-shaped cloudy screen appeared in front of her, which displayed the footage of Gustav's arrival on this floor all by himself. Commander Cilia's eyes widened as she finally saw his facial and body features properly. Gustav? He cleared all those floors by himself? She couldn't believe what she was seeing. Due to this footage, it was obvious that Gustav had been the one clearing the floors, not the so-called unidentified group they initially thought it was. Commander Cilia was astonished, but at the same time even more worried than before after figuring out it was Gustav. "That is the most talented cadet in the entire camp, and you just sent him off to die," Commander Cilia said with look of disappointment. "That kid? I knew he was special," Tabitha voiced out with a slightly regretful tone. "I had no choice." He answered all 3 questions correctly. "How was I supposed to expect that the best youngster under your tutelage would suddenly appear here and render my hundreds of years of knowledge acquired? Useless. I tried, but I wasn't able to prevent him from heading to the next level," Tabitha added. "Open the gateway to the last level. I'm going in to save him," Commander Cilia commanded. "I cannot do that." "You very well know the rules," Tabitha replied while shaking his head. "Try. We can't lose such an important asset to the future of the MBO." Commander Cilia had never looked so frustrated as she voiced out. "It is impossible unless he walks out himself," Tabitha voiced out once more. This was something Commander Cilia already knew, but the situation was dire. How was she going to explain what happened to the higher-ups when Gustav was well known not just to them, but to the whole world as well? "You mentioned he is the most talented." "Who knows? The kid might surprise us. We have no choice but to be hopeful," Tabitha stated. Meanwhile, it was already circulating around camp that a group had managed to break the record and passed the 42nd floor, so cadets were gathering at the dungeon from all across camp. No one wanted to miss out on the revelation of this group. Gustav found himself underneath a clear-looking sky after passing through the gateway. He looked back at the disappearing passageway with a slightly bothered expression. "Who was that?" he voiced out after the passageway disappeared. He had felt a presence appear, and he also faintly heard a voice while he was walking through the spatial passageway. Gustav decided not to think much of it and looked forward at this space he had appeared in. "Looks like I'm no longer underground. The last floor exists in a separate dimension?" Gustav was a bit surprised seeing this. No rocky underground walls or weird structural setting which suited whatever creature he would have to battle. Instead, what he could see here was a large and finite space underneath a bright sky. The first thing that would draw anyone's attention upon getting here was the glowing, multicolored, slanted square-shaped figure in the distance. It looked like a glowing slanted square with 2 more smaller slanted squares of different size within, vermilion, lilac, and the smallest slanted circle within, amaranth. This made it look like one was staring at glowing steps that led deeper into an unknown circle. "What is that thing?" Gustav thought as he slowly walked forward. Chapter 856. Chapter 856. The Devourer of Existences. What is that thing? Gustav thought as he slowly walked forward. All of a sudden, strange energy phased out of these slanted squares, glowing in the distance. Fuhum! It spread across the place. dominating the entirety of this finite space in nearly an instant. A new snack after so many years. A loud, eerie voice reverberated across the place as the squares began to expand. Shinnin, bright multicolored light glowed across the place as Gustav paused his steps after finding out he was unable to sense the state of his body. What is going on? Gustav said internally as he found out he couldn't move. A white stream of light began to phase out of Gustav, flowing towards the multicolored squares. I am devouring your existence. He heard a voice answer in his mind. What are you? Gustav asked, but there was no response. This unknown power had an absolute hold over this space. It was as if it had just woken up from a slumber. Gustav could feel himself getting drained from the very depths of his soul, and he couldn't fight back. It was one of those times when he could do absolutely nothing. Trying to move wasn't working, channeling his bloodline wasn't working, trying to contact the system wasn't working. He could feel his memories slowly fade, as he got weaker with every passing second. He now understood why Tabitha said he would die if he ever came to this floor. No one was expected to get here because all that would be awaiting them in this unknown dimensional was existential erasure. How would a person fight against this? There was nothing to throw hands with. The moment a person got here, they had entered a world controlled by this unknown existence. Gustav felt, if there was a God, this is how powerful he would expect God to be, having the ability to erase someone from existence without them being able to fight against such incredible power. But what Gustav was most intrigued about was what exactly this thing was and why it was placed here. Obviously, it wouldn't be trapped here if no one would be unable to overcome it. However, it made sense now that no one was supposed to get here. Gustav felt this thing was probably sealed here, just like how Tabitha was also imprisoned on the previous floor. The person responsible for this would be either Jack or Mac. This meant for this power actually had a limit and wouldn't affect everyone, or better still, it could be overpowered. Thinking about it to this point, Gustav realized that there should be a way to fight this. The presence itself was stunned internally that it was taking so long to devour Gustav's existence. It felt for someone of Gustav's strength level, he should have devoured him completely by now, memories included. However, it could be seen that Gustav's body was slowly turning more and more transparent as time passed. While the white stream was flowing out of him, he was slowly losing himself. Gustav groaned internally as he thought of ways he could fight against this power since it wasn't limitless. It is devouring my existence, which means there's a part of me currently within it. As this thought appeared in Gustav's mind, he instantly spread his sense beyond his body. His senses followed the trail of the white stream, flowing towards the slanted, multicolored, glowing squares, infiltrating it. Now I'm inside of you, Gustav said internally as his mind entered a different space. This earthling, how did you manage to get here? Gustav could hear the voice of this unknown being in his mind, just as the being also heard Gustav's voice in its mind as well. You're trying to devour me, which means you're giving me access to infiltrate you. Oh, what do we have here? Gustav chuckled in the mind of this unknown being as he spotted a white light in the center of the space his mind found itself. How did you? What are you? Stay away, you vile creature, the being voiced out with a terrified tone in Gustav's mind. Gustav disobeyed and sent his senses peering into the white light. The memories of this unknown being began playing in his mind like a series. Oh, you're an artificial life form, I see. You stay away from my memories. Looks like you've gone through a lot. Or rather, a lot has gone through you. How are you doing this? You're just a mere earth weakling. Stay away. I see, so this is your purpose, but you wreaked havoc on earth in the past. You stay away. I will devour your existence even faster. A dialogue went on between Gustav and this unknown being in their subconscious as this being continued to devour Gustav's existence. It seemed to have emotions as it got even angrier. The the more Gustav spoke and devoured Gustav's existence even faster. Gustav was mostly phasing through the subconscious of this being, not only looking through its memories, but also looking for a way to retract everything that had been pulled out from him. After some time, he finally found an interesting memory, the part where the being was attacking Earth, and how Jack overcame it. Using this new piece of information, Gustav managed to pause the devouring process. Do you really think you're powerful enough to stop me from devouring your existence? The being yelled in Gustav's mind as it increased the power of its pull on Gustav's existence and resumed the devouring process once more. Gustav internally used every bit of strength he could, and a tug-of-war began between them. This being was repeatedly put in a pause and resume situation as Gustav interfered with the process as much as he could. Neither side was willing to give up the pull, but even with this, Gustav knew he was still losing the fight. The mental and spiritual toll this internal battle was taking on him was not in any way little. If it had been any other person, they would have been long devoured, which astonished this being a lot. It had even managed to put Jack in a tough spot for a brief moment, which proved just how almost irresistible its strange power was. Jack being Jack, it was expected he would overcome, but the same couldn't be said for Gustav, who was way weaker in comparison. Chapter 857. Chapter 857. What are you? Gustav could feel himself slowly succumbing and losing against this being as his figure turned more transparent with time. In the end, everything shall be futile. I will devour you. The being voiced in his mind as the pull it exuded turned stronger, and the weird energy phasing from the slanted multicolored squares increased in intensity. At this point, Gustav was at a loss on what to do and tried reaching out to the system, but there was still no response. He guessed that since his existence was being devoured, the system might also be getting devoured as well. Just how powerful was this being that he was able to render even the system powerless? Gustav sent his senses to the deepest parts of himself, trying to trigger Yarki as a last resort, but it was currently unresponsive. What is this that I see within you? You have achieved cosmic superiority? The being sounded extremely astonished as it voiced in Gustav's mind. It had followed Gustav's senses and felt the Yarki as well as the cosmic superior energy hiding within. Ha ha ha, I will devour the existence of a cosmic superior being. Truly interesting. This is very good. This is very good. The being sounded excited as it exerted more strength in devouring Gustav. All of a sudden, the streams of white gushing out of Gustav's figure turned bright yellow with a mix of red. Ha! The unknown being voiced out, its confusion, as it began to feel heated from consuming Gustav. The stream gushing out of Gustav that had turned bright yellow with a mix of red was now starting to look like the sun. Gustav's entire being turned into the same color, making it look like he was covered by the aura of the sun, as a strange and unknown energy phased out of him. What is this? The voice of the unknown being boomed across the space as it felt its energy cowering in fear to this unknown energy phasing out of Gustav's being. The being felt itself been burnt from the inside out the more it devoured Gustav. Now it felt like it was being devoured instead of Gustav. What are you? Erf? What are you? The being yelled out repeatedly as it felt indescribable heat tearing its energy apart as Gustav's sun-like aura spread across the space and pushed its own back completely. This strange energy phasing out of Gustav had completely taken dominance of this entire space, and the stream initially gushing out of Gustav was now being pulled back. I feel strange. What is going on? Gustav wondered subconsciously. With the being almost devouring him completely earlier, he had gotten to a state where he was no longer conscious, but now he was starting to feel like he was recovering. Not just recovering, but something was awakened inside of him. As the stream was being retracted back into Gustav, the slanted multicolored glowing squares up ahead were beginning to shrink. Gustav was devouring this being subconsciously. Stop. Erf? It kept yelling out, but to no avail. The squares continued to shrink till even the colors they exuded began to fade. Ooh, it's you. You're the one, aren't you? The being seemed to have figured out something, as its existence was on the brink of getting snuffed out. Ooh, the outworldly. It's you. Its voice began fading as it came to this realization. It stopped struggling in any way at this point, and let Gustav freely devour it. As the last vestiges of its existence was devoured, it uttered one last word. Master. The squares disappeared completely after that, and the entire space began to fall apart. Cracks appeared in midair, and the grounds began to split. The dimensional was ripping itself apart after the power that held it together was gone. At this point, Gustav opened his eyes that were radiating with the glow of the sun. The destruction of the space instantly came to a stop as the sun, like aura oozing from his being, spread across the place. What is this power? I feel like I could destroy a city with a casual flick of my wrist, Gustav muttered softly as he raised his hand and stared at it. His entire body was still glowing with the sun-colored energy, his hand included. A portal opened up in front of him, which led to the previous floor. He slowly walked forward and went through it. It had been hours since Commander Cilia and the guards arrived at the level 46. They had been waiting all this time with Tabitha while thinking of different ways to get to the last level. He would be dead by now. And no need to bother trying to seek for a way to infiltrate the last floor, Tabitha voiced out. It's Gustav. He might have managed to find a way to stay alive. Commander Cilia didn't want to lose hope of Gustav still being alive. I know that kid is special, but don't fool yourself. You know no one else is capable of surviving unless they are as strong as Jack and the others, or they have the token you possess, Tabitha stated, hitting Commander Cilia with a dose of reality as she recalled just how terrifying the presence within the last floor was. Commander Cilia looked down with a devastated expression. This is all your fault, Tabitha, you should. Just as she was speaking, a portal suddenly appeared in front of the altar. Commander Cilia, Tabitha, and the guards all stared in the direction of the portal as they felt an immensely powerful and domineering energy coming from it. Step, step, step. Gustav casually stepped out of the portal, arriving with a sun-like glowing figure. Vroom, the domineering energy spread across the place, causing every single one of them to feel their knees weaken. Even Tabitha felt pressure from this energy oozing forth from Gustav. Gustav? Kid? Commander Cilia and Tabitha voiced out at the same time with surprised expressions. The instant Gustav walked a few steps forward, his body began to dim. The glow receded along with the domineering energy, and Gustav returned to his normal look. "Huh, it's gone," he said internally as he could no longer sense the power from a moment ago. Chapter 858. Chapter 858. Kohilia's motives, huh? It's gone, he said internally as he could no longer sense the power from a moment ago. The vicinity also returned to tranquility. Now, not only was Gustav left wondering where the power from a while ago came from, but he was also wondering where it disappeared to, as well as the being he devoured in the last floor. Commander Cilia, what are you doing here? Gustav voiced out with a suspicious tone as he looked around. He could also see several guards scattered around the place. They all stared at Gustav with looks of shock and astonishment, like they couldn't believe what they were seeing. What was that power he exuded a while ago? Thoughts similar to this ran through everyone's mind. "Are you okay?" Commander Cilia blurted out as she moved closer to Gustav. "Yeah, why wouldn't I be?" Gustav responded while squinting his eyes. "How did you survive, kid?" Tabitha asked with a tone of disbelief. "Didn't I tell you I would?" Gustav said while walking towards the altar area. He sat at the edge as his mind reeled a bit. He could feel a weird sense of fatigue washing over him. I wonder why the MBO would place such a dangerous being on one of the floors, though. Are you guys really trying to end the existence of the cadets? Gustav asked with a light chuckle. Commander Cilia's face lightly paled as she heard that. She arrived in front of Gustav with a worried look. What happened in the last floor? Well, I'm here, so what do you think happened? Gustav answered with a question of his own. You survived. So, does that mean it let you go? Commander Cilia asked because she was still having a hard time constructing what could have happened internally. Even someone as powerful as she was needed to go in there with a token to prevent the being from devouring her existence. So, she could not understand how Gustav managed to pull it off, except it let him go. Let me go? Puffed. Gustav laughed lightly after hearing that. Do you think such a being would be willing to just let me go? Gustav asked. Knowing the personality of this being, Commander Cilia herself knew well that such a thing happening was practically impossible. But what other explanation would there be for this? Kid, you devoured it, didn't you? Tabitha seemed to know what had happened already as he stared at Gustav from up above. Devoured it? Impossible. Commander Cilia stated with a look of disbelief. Its name was Cohilia. I have seen its memories. Jack imprisoned it here, when it came down to Earth, causing havoc in a bid to find someone, Gustav narrated. Me, he said internally. Commander Cilia couldn't believe her ears as Gustav narrated what Cohilia was, and its various experiences with other planets it had visited. According to records that had been hidden to the world, Cohilia had devoured the existences of alien creatures on different planets. It would devour planets and solar systems when it didn't get what it wanted. This was information that only a few knew in the MBO. It had been hidden to everyone else. When it came to Earth to do the same, it encountered Jack and wasn't powerful enough to end Jack. Jack ended up defeating it and sealing it here instead. Why did Jack seal it here? Gustav asked. No one was ever meant to reach this part of the dungeon. Sir Jack constructed this whole dungeon using his space construct and sealed it in the last floor. At the time, it seemed like the best thing to do considering no cadet would ever be powerful enough to surpass the 42nd floor, except they were not cadets but full-fledged officers, Commander Cilia stated. "No, you're wrong." Tabitha suddenly cut her off. Huh? Commander Cilia had a slightly confused expression as she looked up at him. No one was expected to ever reach this stage except it was the person who Cohilia came looking for in the first place. When Jack stopped Cohilia in the past, he found out its motive due to reading its memories. He placed Cohilia here not only to imprison it, but also for the person who Cohilia came in search of to be revealed one day. And now, we finally know who that person is, Tabitha said while squatting, bringing his face level close to Gustav's. Commander Cilia's eyes widened slightly as she heard this. Gustav's entire body was like an ant before Tabitha's gigantic head, as both of them locked eyes. "Who are you, kid?" Tabitha asked with a strong but wary tone. "What does it matter?" Gustav responded with an unfazed tone. "I need to know whether or not you are a threat to the existence of Earth," Tabitha stated. "Well, it's kind of the opposite, and I almost got erased on the other floor. So I really don't know what you're talking about when you say I'm the one it's been looking for," Gustav voiced out. So what happened to it? Did you or did you not devour Cohilia?" Tabitha asked. "I don't know what happened, but I won the battle." Gustav shrugged his shoulders while responding. Gustav didn't want to admit to anyone that the Cohilia was here to find him because he didn't know what actions the MBO might take. It was already obvious that he won whatever battle that happened on the last floor, so he couldn't lie about that, but he had decided he would deny till the very end that Cohilia was here to find him. You should inform Jack, so he can come inspect this kid himself. "I don't trust him," Tabitha said to Commander Cilia. "Enough of this. I have cleared all the floors, and I am now heading back to my room to rest. I am tired," Gustav said while standing to his feet. He truly was feeling fatigued, but it was mostly mentally. It had been no less than 12 hours since he embarked on the journey to clear all the floors. He was able to accomplish that, but now he needed good rest, as well as time to digest everything that had happened. Fwaiu, Tabitha blew an icy breeze that left Gustav frozen in the next instant when he was about to take another step forward. You should isolate him till Jack finishes inspecting him, Tabitha said after freezing Gustav. Unfreeze him, Commander Cilia commanded. What? I did that to help you guys. Don't tell me you want to let him go? Tabitha voiced out with a tone of annoyance. Do you even know who he is? Commander Cilia asked. This kid is the valued student of young Miss Amy. Unless you want her to come down here and blast you to pieces, I suggest you unfreeze him now, Commander Cilia stated. The young mixed blood who can contend against Jack. Tabitha asked, Yes, this is her student, which is one of the reasons he is so skilled. The MBO doesn't mess with him because we believe if anything goes wrong with him, she will be able to stop him herself. I suggest you refrain from doing anything stupid that would incur her wrath, Commander Cilia explained. Geez, that young blood is scary. Humph. All right, but make sure you tell Jack to inspect him for abnormalities. Who knows if we have a ticking time bomb on our hands, Tabitha said before blowing out breeze from his mouth again. Gustav got freed in the next instant and turned to look at Tabitha with an irritated look. He doesn't need to be in isolation for that, Commander Cilia said before turning around to leave with Gustav. Gustav, you have to keep everything that has happened here a secret. Please do not inform anyone about the things you have witnessed in this floor, as well as the last, Commander Cilia said as they walked away. Sure. Y'all just make sure you have a good compensation for me to keep my mouth shut. This shouldn't be in a cadet's dungeon in the first place, Gustav responded without any sign of being intimidated by all that had happened. Commander Cilia had a wry look on her face as she responded to Gustav. Minutes later, they arrived at the entrance of the dungeon, which was crowded with lots of cadets. Barely any cadet was moving in. Most of them just stood by the entrance like they were waiting for something. The moment Commander Cilia arrived with Gustav, their eyes locked onto them. Dash, isn't that Gustav? Dash, is he part of the group that cleared the 42nd floor? Dash, where are the rest of them? They instantly recognized Gustav, and a lot of them were astonished, but felt it also made sense since it was Gustav. They wondered where the rest of the group was as they watched Gustav walk out alone with just Commander Cilia and the guards who initially followed herein. Hey, Gus, Gustav heard a familiar voice call out to him from the side. Chapter 859. Chapter 859. Confusing thoughts. Error has been fixed. E.E. Gustav paused his movement as he spotted E.E. within the crowd gathered at the front. You were in there this whole time? E.E. voiced out as he pushed himself out of the crowd. It turned out he wasn't alone. Eldris, Falco, and Timmy were with him as well. You guys. You're here too, Gustav said as he spotted the rest of them. Yeah, we came here to team up and scale the floors. You weren't in your room when we knocked earlier, so we had to come here by ourselves, Eldris explained. Oh, I was just leaving. I've been here for over half a day, Gustav responded with, as he yawned lightly. Oh, yeah, these guys are saying your group cleared the 42nd floor. Tell us, man, how far did your group go? Falco voiced out with an excited expression. Group? Nah, I went in by myself, Gustav stated. By yourself? Teamy eyes widened as he voiced out lightly. His voice wasn't low, so the cadets in the vicinity heard this. Their faces were filled with astonishment and disbelief as they began chattering. Dash, he scaled the 42nd floor all by himself? Dash, impossible. He must be lying. Dash, Commander Cilia went in to get him. And he's here all by himself, so he must have gone in by himself. Dash, or maybe all his teammates are dead. Different opinions and thoughts were being voiced out after the revelation. Yeah, I was alone all through. I don't understand why Commander Cilia came to find me, Gustav said while shrugging his shoulders. They said you went beyond the 42nd floor. How far did you go? He asked with a look of excitement. The 46th floor and then the 47th floor. But both are one-time entry floors. No one will be able to get beyond the 45th floor anymore, Gustav stated. You scaled all the floors? Eldris asked with a surprised tone. Yeah. Want to go back to rest now? I'm exhausted, Gustav responded while turning around to leave. You gotta tell us all about it later, man, E voiced out, and Gustav proceeded to raise a thumb up as he walked away. At this point, the cadets in the vicinity were all astonished. It turned out that not only were there no groups, but Gustav had managed to scale all the floors. Gustav left the dungeon with Commander Cilia, who said Jack might be coming over to camp again later to inspect Gustav. Gustav just shrugged and said he didn't mind, so long as they didn't try to do anything stupid like isolate him. Hours later, Gustav was sitting on his bed with his right hand held out. He had reminisced about everything that had happened in the last 24 hours, and it still left him astonished. His senses peered into his hand, and he could see a transparent orb-like seal in which 3 overlapping slanted squares with different colors could be seen within. This was where Kohelia had been sealed within him after he devoured it. However, Gustav was unable to talk to Kohelia, sense its consciousness, or use its ability in any way. It was like Kohelia was sealed within him, but he had no access to it, or he just didn't know how to unseal it. Gustav had tried various ways to see if he could use Kohelia's powers, but it was all to no avail. He could only stare at it within the seal. Besides this, the power that manifested from Gustav when he was about to be devoured completely was also nowhere to be found. Gustav suspected it might be from his cosmic superiority, but at the same time, he wasn't so certain. Kohelia figured out that he was the outworldly before it was devoured completely, so there was a chance that the power did not come from cosmic superiority, but rather it came from his existence as the outworldly. But at the same time, this thought confused Gustav, as Huseruus mentioned that a force had already tampered with his existence as the outworldly, so his outworldly abilities were missing. Everything just seemed kind of confusing, but Gustav was mostly disappointed because it looked like he didn't get anything out of scaling the dungeon completely, besides the EXPs that had helped him in reaching level 73. Also, Gustav seemed to have gotten a few rewards from the system that included level increase in some skills. His silent advancement skill also evolved to stealth after it had been at the max level for some time. This made Gustav understand that system skills were capable of evolving after reaching max level. He thought of sprint and dash, wondering why they were taking so long to evolve, but he hoped they would soon. System, what really happened there? Gustav asked. I am also unaware. All I know is the moment Kohelia began using its power, everything went blank for me. I couldn't talk to you or sense the environment anymore. The system explained its experience at the last floor. Just what type of power does Kohelia use that it has an effect on even you? Gustav was amazed as he voiced out. A type of power that is unfathomable. Jack would have lost to it if he wasn't so powerful. The system responded. It called me master in its last moments, and apparently it has been looking for me. Gustav was not aware of why this was, so as he didn't browse through all of Kohelia's memories, but he was really conflicted right now since he didn't have access to Kohelia anymore. Well, I'm sure that's pretty simple, Gustav. Have you not figured out by now that there is barely any type of power that is capable of having effect on me? The system voiced out like it was hinting at something. Yeah, I don't remember you mentioning you could be affected by any power, especially when you have transcended across galaxies. Gustav said with a thoughtful gaze. Exactly, but this one had big effect on me. And the only power I know capable of doing that is the power of the outworldly, the system stated. Chapter 860. Chapter 860. The power is mine? What do you mean? Gustav asked while squinting his eyes. It called you master because it was initially a part of you. Kohelia was using your power. The system added. What? It was using my power? I don't understand how that is even possible. None of all these makes any sense, Gustav said with a slightly confused expression. The items scattered across the universe that the time candidate is supposed to help you find are actually items belonging to the outworldly, a part of his power. Your power, Kohelia, is one of the items, and it came looking for you by itself. The system explained. I wasn't supposed to reveal this to you, but since you already acquired one of them, I guess there is no problem in telling you. Although it was unexpected that one of them was on Earth. The system added. So that means the power is mine. How is it that I can't use it then? Gustav asked. Your body took the necessary steps and sealed it away because you are currently too weak to wield such a power. The system responded. Something that could make even the most powerful mixed blood on Earth wary and render the strength of MBO officers that were stronger than Gustav useless. Of course, its power was no joke. Gustav wielding such a god-like power would make him almost invisible, but it seemed such power was too much for him as he was now. Wait, is this why one of the 5 years' quests is for me to become the most powerful mixed blood on Earth? Gustav asked. I can't tell you the answer to that. The system responded. If the other items just like this one have nearly invisible abilities that could render lots of powerful people useless, I would not be able to wield their power due to weakness, and they would end up getting sealed within me just like this one. I have to get stronger to be able to wield them in the future upon acquiring them. Gustav held his chin as he voiced out his theory. The system kept silent, not revealing to him whether he was correct or not. However, Gustav felt his theory made sense, become the strongest to become even stronger. Whatever was coming was probably no small thing considering being the strongest on the planet, and one of the most powerful in the universe wasn't enough. When will I be able to unseal it? Gustav asked. When you're powerful enough, the system answered. How powerful? Gustav wanted a specific answer. When you're powerful enough, the system answered with the same phrase once more. Gustav. Gustav decided to stop asking and started thinking of how he would exploit the MBO to get anything he wanted for keeping his mouth shut on the Tabitha and Kohelia matter. He already knew that even if Jack inspected him, he wouldn't find the presence of Kohelia within him, since it was sealed. Of course the MBO would still be suspicious of him even after finding out he scaled all these floors all by himself. But there was nothing they could do to him unless they found out he did something wrong. Even with Miss Amy being away from Earth presently, they were still reluctant about treating Gustav anyhow they willed. In a flash another day went by, and Gustav spent the rest of his time moving around camp and spending time with E.E., Angie, and the others. Except for channeling his bloodline in the middle of the night, Gustav didn't engage in any form of training. At this point, it had already circulated all across camp that Gustav completed all the levels. It was a very hot topic, and multiple cadets had approached him to ask for insights after saying they got stuck in floors above 40 even with their groups. Gustav mostly avoided all these group of people because there was no way he could tell them he scaled through because of cosmic superiority. If Gustav had tried using just brute strength and his normal abilities, at most he knew within himself he wouldn't be able to get beyond the 43rd floor. The 43rd to 45th floor had mixed breeds that rivaled multiple peak kilo-ranked mixed bloods. Not only was Gustav all by himself, he was still far from being a kilo-ranked mixed blood, more so a peak-ranked one at that. Cosmic superiority was just too powerful at this point, but Gustav was still unaware of whether it could affect anyone beyond the kilo rank. At this point, everyone on camp was comparing Gustav to the most powerful mixed blood, who was a final-year cadet. This number 1 final-year cadet had not accomplished such a feat and had only been said to visit the dungeon with groups in the past. Compared to what Gustav's recent feat, they felt he didn't hold a candle to Gustav. However, the number 1 who went by the name Danny had been away from camp for some time, so it was unknown whether he had improved in strength since they hadn't seen him in so long. This made it hard for a lot of final years to accept that Gustav was stronger, but thinking of it, they were unable to tell if anyone was capable of clearing the dungeon all by themselves without any group. Gustav was unbothered by all the debates occurring across camp. A lot of cadets were disappointed Danny wasn't around at this time. They were hoping they'd see a duel between him and Gustav. Such event would not take place because Gustav would be leaving the camp soon. His next mission briefing was taking place the following day. How is it that we still can't get past the 42nd floor? Gus, you gotta give your boys some tips, he voiced out as he laid on Gustav's couch with a fatigued look. Let me see, Gustav said as he held his chin like he was thinking of a good tip. He sat up, and Eldris, as well as the rest in the room, stared at Gustav, attentively waiting for what he was going to say. Oh, when things get too tough, use your emergency token and escape from there, Gustav said before turning around and heading to the kitchen. Eldris, Falco, _ Chapter 861. Chapter 861. Are you ready for your mission briefing? All of them had looks of dissatisfaction on their faces after hearing what Gustav said. Thanks, bro. I'm pretty sure we were unaware of that tip before, he stated with a sarcastic tone. You're welcome, Gustav answered from within the kitchen. This MF, everyone burst into laughter in the next moment. Gustav later came out of the kitchen with food, and everyone settled down to have dinner. Y'all want me to come with you to the dungeon tomorrow? Gustav asked. Of course, definitely. Seems like cheating, but I want to see what's on the 45th floor. They all agreed to Gustav coming with them. They initially asked Gustav about the lowest floors and what to expect. Gustav did tell them everything they wanted to hear except for the 46th and 47th floors. Gustav left out a lot of details on that and just drew them a rough mental sketch with his words. They could sense that he was withholding information, but Gustav had told them if they wanted to know, they should try scaling all the floors, which was impossible considering the MBO had put a seal on the passageways that led to the 46th floor. It was now impossible to go beyond the 45th floor. Now, they were trying to get to the 45th floor, but it was proving really tough for them as well. They knew everything would turn easy the moment Gustav came along with them. They had no idea that Gustav wouldn't be using Yarki, so things would still be difficult with him around, but it would be better than before. I won't help y'all too much, so don't expect things to still be very easy with me around, Gustav stated. He didn't want it to look weird when they saw him struggling with the creatures on the lowest floors, so he was saying this now. Using just his normal abilities would make things more difficult, and he wouldn't be able to get past the 43rd floor all by himself, but with the others around, it was possible even without Yarki. Sure, so long as you're coming with us, who knows your presence might even scare them away, he voiced out after gobbling a spoonful of food. I doubt that would happen. Anyways, we'll head there after my mission briefing, Gustav stated. Everyone heard that, and was reminded that Gustav would be having his next mission briefing the next day, which meant he would be leaving camp the day after tomorrow, and they wouldn't be seeing him for a couple of months again. Did you accept the ISOP participant invitation yet? Eldris asked after some time. Nah, I told them they'd have to wait for a few months before I make up my mind, Gustav answered. Wow, it's crazy they agreed. Originally, they'd have picked all their candidates and sub-candidates by now to start registrations, Falco voiced out with a tone of astonishment. Well, it's either that or they can forget about me participating, Gustav said, while shrugging his shoulders. It's Gustav, they wouldn't do that. They wouldn't want to miss out on the opportunity of him representing Earth, he said with a tone of excitement. General World Training will probably start in 4 to 5 months, which means we might not even get the chance to embark on any missions before we get pulled into the ISOP training program, Timmy voiced out. I heard that mixed bloods from other private training institutions will get drafted as well. It won't be just cadets from the MBO, Falco said with a thoughtful gaze. This makes things very interesting. Only Gustav and Alevra have been ascertained to be main candidates. The rest of us will still have to fight for our spot on the main team, so we don't get placed in the sub-candidates group, he said with a look of interest. It turned out the MBO had already informed EE and the others about ISOP and wanted them to become participants, but unlike Gustav and Alevra, the others would still have to undergo some kind of test and pass before they could be placed on the main team. Well, Eldris also has no issues. But the rest of us should be wary, since final year cadets will also be competing to be on the main team, Falco voiced out with a slightly troubled tone. They all knew Eldris was almost as strong as Elevera as of now. He had improved the most amongst all of them in these past months, followed by EE, so they were sure he wouldn't have any issues competing to be on the main team, even if it was with final year cadets, mixed blood from other private institutions as well. We don't know what to expect, so we should prepare ourselves properly, Falco added. Gustav, will you be attending the General World Training? He asked. I don't think I'll have the time, which is also one of the reasons I'm not so sure about participating in ISOP, but I guess we'll see how things go, Gustav answered while finishing up his food. He felt it would be a waste of time attending the training, since he might be busy with something important at the time. He had decided that even if he did participate in ISOP and the government made it a criterion for every candidate to attend the training, he still wouldn't attend unless he wasn't busy. The night went by in a flash, and the next morning, Gustav headed towards the main hall for his mission briefing. Just like the last time, his briefing was taking place in Commander Cilia's office, and an MBO personnel would be delivering it to him. Gustav arrived there around 8 a.m., as expected, and an MBO officer was already waiting for him in the office. Welcome, Officer Gustav. Are you ready for your mission briefing? The MBO officer in orange-striped uniform voiced out with a mild smile. Officer Zanatus, it's been a while, Gustav responded with a smile, as well the moment he spotted this familiar-looking MBO officer. Chapter 862. Chapter 862. The Vertigan Family Crisis. Gradier Zanatus. It's been a while, Gustav responded with a smile, as well the moment he spotted this familiar-looking MBO officer. Just like the last time, Officer Zanatus was the same person who came to give Gustav his next mission briefing. I don't need to ask if you've been doing well. Your feats are spreading across the MBO, so I hear of your tales a lot, Gradier Zanatus smiled, as he voiced out with a praiseful tone. Gustav just chuckled lightly in response. It was nice seeing Gradier Zanatus again after so long. This man had always been an ally, and Gustav was not in any way doubtful that he must have been a great help to situations regarding himself and Miss Amy. Even though the MBO had lots of corrupt leaders and officers, Gustav was sure of Gradier Zanatus' unbiased attitude to the duty that concerns mixed bloods, just as the MBO was created for. Except he had strict orders from the higher-ups. Both of them sat in Commander Cilia's office alone as Gradier Zanatus began to break down Gustav's next mission. Truin, this is the emblem of Vertigan family, Gradier Zanatus voiced out as he gestured at the holographic picture that had just appeared in midair. What could be seen was a flat diamond-shaped object. It was gold and white in color with sharp-looking edges. In the middle was the carving of a three-headed draconic-like creature. All in all, this emblem looked quite domineering, as well as luxurious. It's actually a true piece of luxury in physical form, and it suddenly went missing a month back from the main household of the Vertigan family, Gradier Zanatus voiced out. Before anything, let me explain to you why this emblem is important, he added, so Gustav would not think he was embarking on some lackluster mission. The Vertigan family is a big extended family that has been existing for several centuries, and they have grown in such large numbers during a long period of time that they even own a city of their own, and are a major ally to the government, Gradier Zanatus began explaining. Not only are they just a mixed-blood large family comparable to the size of a small city, but they also possess a lineage-type bloodline, which you might recall since you recently dueled with a cadet that comes from a small branch of the Vertigan family. Gradier Zanatus went on to mention Vaughn, who Gustav dueled recently. Vaughn was also able to transform into a draconic-like form and spit out lightning from his mouth. Lineage-type bloodlines were always very powerful and would be passed down from generation to generation. So everyone in such a family would have the same type of bloodline, but in different variations. while Gradius Anatus explained more about the Vertigan family. He didn't know Gustav was already aware of the information he was spewing out. Internally, Gustav was feeling excited after hearing his next mission related to this family, contrary to what Gradius Anatus thought. Wouldn't this make it a good chance for me to do that? Gustav thought internally. So the emblem is passed to the next head of the main household who would lead the entire family, and it possesses a special type of power that not only makes the every family member unable to disobey the new head, but also adds a boon to their strength. Now that this emblem is missing, the ceremony of the next Vertigan head cannot take place. Whoever may have taken it away, if they figure out how to access the power within the emblem, it would cause a catastrophe. Gradius Anatus' explanation to this point had brought Gustav to an understanding that the mission was not as simple as it looked. For all he knew, this could be some type of family feud. For such a big family like this, it could be that another branch of the family, or maybe some forces from the main family, were not satisfied with the new head that was about to be appointed. There could be a ton of reasons, like unknown internal strife, and it was really unwise to meddle in this type of business. However, it was now a case of crime amongst mixed bloods, which also made it dangerous for them, as well as the people living in their city. Now, the MBO had to step in. It's been a month. Why haven't the MBO sent someone to look for it? Gustav asked. Well, first off, the main Vertigan family didn't inform us when it went missing. They tried to keep it under the wraps to prevent any form of panic or negative situation it could cause, and decided to look for it themselves. However, they were unable to find it even after weeks had gone by. The MBO was initially going to send you on a different mission, but we found this suiting considering you've mostly embarked on investigation missions in the past, even though some were rough and quite bloody, Gradius Anatus explained. It turned out this mission was given to him based on his other performances in other missions, the things he discovered during his undercover missions as well. So Gustav was deemed intelligent and powerful. This was precisely what the MBO needed for this type of mission. There was no doubt that at some point it might turn out physical. A scuffle could not be avoided, and they were sending him to an area where one of the most powerful mixed blood force on the earth was located. Besides being intelligent, he had to be strong enough because no one knew what might happen and the opponents he might have to face. Solo? Or am I getting a team? Gustav asked. This is currently a 5-star mission, but you will be going solo, Officer Gustav. The MBO needs to keep their engagement in this issue under the wraps to prevent any leak-outs. It could harm the image of the main family, which is not in anyone's best interest. You are allowed to use lethal force when necessary, but you will be the only officer embarking on this mission, Gradius Anatus clarified. Chapter 863. Chapter 863. Clearing the floors with the boys, Gustav had a serious look on his face as he heard this, but internally he was rejoicing. There was nothing he wanted more than to embark on this mission alone. Besides, he had dealt with 5-star missions before, so he was sure this was something he could handle on his own. Currently, it's a 5-star mission, but it could increase based on any change in situation, which was why Gustav didn't want to be too complacent. However, this was perfect for him, as he felt he would be able to perform actions without worries since he was going to be all by himself. Mycenite City is a place where the Vertigan family is located. Von Tridacil would have also been a perfect candidate for this mission considering he comes from one of the branches of Vertigan City, but he seems to be currently indisposed. As you well know, Gradius Anatus voiced out the last sentence with a hint of sarcasm as the holographic image changed to a new one. Gustav knew very well that Gradius Anatus was referring to how he left Vaughn with an injury that he would not recover from for a couple of months. He ripped off his wings, after all, and such an act dealt damage to Vaughn's lineage bloodline. It was a miracle Vaughn's bloodline rank didn't decrease. Gustav still didn't care about all these. He was glad he would finally be visiting a city that had tens of thousands of mixed bloods with the same type of bloodline he was interested in. The holographic image had changed to display a small city located in between a body of water. It turned out the city was on an island. You'll be heading here. First, the moment you arrive. Gradius and Adis began to catch Gustav up on the different locations in Mycenite City. From there, he went on to brief Gustav about the suspicions of the main family and how they noticed the emblem got missing. Gustav was shown the pictures of all the people in the main family, as well as the person who was chosen to become the next head of the family. "He's just a kid," Gustav voiced out as he stared at the dark-skinned young man who looked no older than 18 years of age. He had a curly-looking hair with braids at the front that reached down to his chin area. "Yeah, he's quite young, but he's the next head according to the hereditary lineup," Gradius and Adis responded. "If it isn't normal for the next head to be this young before being placed at the seat of power, this may be where the internal issue lies," Gustav thought as he took notice of every main family look. Hours later, Gustav was within the dungeon scaling the floors with E.E. and the others. They talked about Gustav's new mission, which he only told he would be heading to Mycenite City for. They laughed at the irony, saying Gustav just dealt with a family member of theirs, and now he had to visit their place. Hopefully Vaughn wasn't well known in the big family, or someone would definitely try to make things difficult for Gustav if they found out what he did to Vaughn. Gustav also had such thoughts, but instead of hoping for it not to happen, he wanted the opposite. It was almost like Gustav wanted violence over peace with his current mindset, and only him knew why. Bang, bang, boom. Sounds of collisions and small explosions rang out as they wreaked havoc across the floors while scaling them. In a few more hours, they had arrived at the 41st floor. This was the same floor where Flame's Death Ace mixed breeds were gathered. A similar scene to what happened when Gustav visited the 41st floor alone the last time played out again. These gigantic owl-faced creatures with bat wings and black, scaly beast-like body charged at all of them the moment they had been summoned. Their 3 serpentine-like tails slashed across the place as they flew. Some were able to shoot out flames from these serpentine-like tails, and their body temperature was also very high, so it made it even difficult to go near them. Gustav was currently just using his normal abilities, so, as expected, the difficulty level had gone up by several heights. Teamy hands glowed red as he grabbed hold of one of the 3 tails of a creature, causing it to start turning gray. However, he had to let go in the next moment to dodge another swing of the second tail, but while doing so, the 3rd tail was swinging at him. Sriraria, a purplish vortex ring, suddenly slid forward, swallowing Teamy whole. He appeared on the other side of the creature in the next instant. Eep, who was several hundred feet behind, turned his left palm anti-clockwise, causing the vortex to open as his right hand turned clockwise. As Gustav flung one of the creatures towards the side, a vortex opened up and swallowed the creature, only for it to reappear several hundred feet towards the east with its body still propelling forward. Bang, 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 bang. With its massive body that was 3 times the size of a truck, it slammed into multiple others of its kind. On another side of this floor, Eldris' eyes opened up as it held a creature that had lost its color up in the air and teleported to its top before sending a devastating punch towards its head that sent it hurling downwards. Dark Falco, on the other hand, was being assisted by Rhea, who trapped a few of the creatures in the ground, while Dark Falco darted across the place, wreaking havoc with his power of darkness and sharp claws. Despite the group managing to hold their own, it was still a difficult battle due to the numbers of these creatures, as well as the sturdiness of their body that made it immensely difficult to kill one of them even after raining down barrages of attack. The leader of the creatures would not just sit back and watch its kind slowly getting defeated. So at this point, it flew off the blazing rock. It was standing up towards who it suspected was the leader of this mixed blood group. Chapter 864. Chapter 864. Summoning an armies, it flew off the blazing rock it was standing on towards who it suspected was the leader of this mixed blood group. Let's put all-out attack power on a few and block out the rest till we've destroyed these ones first. Gustav voiced out as he darted towards the side. Boom. One of the creatures landed where he was initially standing on. Gustav turned to face it after dodging that, and ran forward before sliding across the ground. Fwai! One of the creature's tails swept above his body, sliding across the ground, and Gustav raised his hand up, which was armed with an atomic blade. Screeve, the atomic blade cut across the belly of the creature, slicing through its tough, hardened body as Gustav arrived on the other side. Just when he was about to give the finishing blow, the leader of the Flames' Death Ace came charging out of nowhere with a blazing figure and slammed head onto Gustav's back. Bang! Gustav was sent crashing forward as his body went over the edge of one of the areas that had a fire pit. He was falling into the immensely hot pit of flames due to the attack that had taken everyone by surprise. He was unable to react in time, as well as Eldris and the others. The leader instantly charged towards the others to give them a tough time, thinking it had already dealt with their leader as well. Fwai, a similar-looking figure to the leader of the Flames' Death Ace, suddenly flew over the edge that led to one of the burning pits in the area. Zraiariahib, its entire boy, was burning with amaze flames just like the leader, which made it freeze in place with shock and astonishment. Gustav, who had transformed into the Flames' Death Ace leader, which bloodline he took days before, swooped down with force and landed on the head of this leader. Boom! An outburst of flames spread across the place as the ground also caved in, while the creature's head was buried a few feet into the ground with Gustav standing atop with his gigantic body. The shriek of the leader was heard as it pushed upwards with force, managing to release itself from Gustav's clutches despite receiving the heavy blow to its head. The other creatures in the vicinity had paused for a bit, not knowing who to attack between Gustav and the leader, since both of them had similar leading appearances. Oh, I can also do this, Gustav thought as he stomped on the ground. Boom! A wave of flames spread across the ground in a circular format, forming a kind of runic figure on the ground as well. In the next instant, Flames' Death Ace mixed breeds began to phase out of the ground. It turned out to be more useful than being used only for flight, Gustav said internally as the creatures he had just summoned began to fight the other creatures from the leader of this floor. Eldris, Falco, and the others were shocked as they witnessed these creatures fighting their battles. Things went from being difficult to pretty easy as they joined Gustav's army of beasts to push back the other Flames' Death Ace. Usually these creatures healed up after getting injured, so it was necessary to finish them up as quickly as possible to avoid getting jumped by the same creature twice, but it was initially difficult since there were so many of them. Now and the others could attack from the sides. Ran forward as he conjured up multiple vortexes, sending them out with as much speed as he could. Fwai, some of the creatures would fly through these vortexes by mistake as it appeared in front of them, and in the next moment find themselves receiving the full brunt of a mighty attack. Some of them would land on the ground and sink into it due to a vortex trap already left. In the next moment, they would find themselves getting impaled by one of the pointy rocks by the side. Gustav dealt with the leader, overpowering it occasionally as both of them clashed with body of flames. Gustav's mobility was greatly reduced taking on this form, but his combat capabilities still aided him a lot despite being on the same level of strength with the leader while using this form. In a few more minutes, he ended the leader by wrapping his 3 serpentine-like tails around its neck and pulling its head off its body. Host has killed a level 80 Flames Death Ace, 2 million EXP. Host has killed a level 80 Flames Death Ace, 2 million EXP. Multiple notifications kept popping up due to his summoned creatures also dealing the opponents. At this point, things were already ending with Eldris, Falco, and the others as well. Gustav's army of 42 had been reduced to 29, but still they managed to wipe out all the opposing creatures. Gustav didn't know how to unsummon them, so they had to move to the 43rd floor with the creatures. Things got tougher in the 43rd floor due to increase in strength of the creatures, but since they had help from Gustav's summoned creatures, they still managed to push through till they arrived on the 45th floor. The 45th floor, which was now labeled as the last floor had only one creature. This creature was way more stronger than the others in the previous floors and had impenetrable skin. It looked like a 14 feet tall armadillo with violet-colored outer covering. It stood on 2 feet like a human with a muscular frame, but its look was nothing like that of a human. It was considerably smaller in size compared to the other creatures, but its power was unmatched. It was the literal definition of smaller doesn't necessarily mean weaker. Its violet outer covering would glow immensely any time it charged forward like it was building up power. And the moment it slashed out with its claws, it wreaked immense destruction across the place. Despite dodging a lot of times, Falco and Rhea had been blasted backwards by the residual impact. Chapter 865. Chapter 865. Scaling the last floor, they already sustained minor injuries at this point. Meanwhile, Eldris and Timi had engaged it in close combat, throwing lots of attacks at it, but they still hadn't managed to deal any damage to it. Gustav's summoned creatures were lunging at it with everything they had, and it was taking them down one strike at a time. Swai, with a single slash, he ripped one of the creatures, which were at least 3 times larger than him, in half. Internal organs fell out of the air as the creature dissected body parts flew in 2 opposite directions. The toughness of the creature they were supposed to defeat on this floor was the main problem. Even though its power was something to watch out for, they wouldn't be as worried if they could inflict damage on it. But all their attacks seemed to be repelled back by its body, leaving them running across the place aimlessly. Timi's power that could cause anything to degrade didn't seem to be working on its body, even after using a very powerful attack that covered a large range, and was supposed to degrade the body of the creature. There was no effect. What Timi didn't know was it was having an effect, but the effect was so minimal it looked as if there was none at all. EE had conjured up multiple vortexes, saving the others from the attack of this mixed blood multiple times. At the moment, he was about to use a powerful vortex attack, which he was sure would work against the creature, but he was reluctant to use it because of the way it would make him feel. Gustav was sitting far behind them, on a small rock protruding from the ground, crossing his legs while watching them battle with the mixed breed. "Dom, how did you kill this MF alone, Gus?" EE voiced out from up ahead, as he sank into one of his vortexes, dodging another attack that caused the entire vicinity to descend into shambles. Of course, Gustav couldn't tell them. He only had to use Yarki to cause it to submit, and one touch from him caused the creature to get obliterated. With Yarki, the toughness of the creature didn't matter, since it was being obliterated from the inside out, but he couldn't perform such a feat without Yarki. "Focus your attacks on one point or aim for its internals," Gustav voiced out. This was easier said than done, as getting close to the creature was close to impossible due to its speed and power. Aiming for its internals was also something no one there could do except for EE. Eldris appeared at the creature's blind spot as it was being flanked by Dark, Falco, Rhea, and Timi. The instant it fended off their attack and speedily turned around to counter Eldris, he had already opened his eyes at this point. For him, the environment turned into black and white as the mixed breed lost color and found itself unable to move for an instant. Bang! Eldris' fist slammed into its jaw area, sending it flying upwards. His speed increased exponentially as afterimages were left in his wake while he leaped upwards and continued to thrust his palms forward repeatedly. Bam, 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 bam. In barely a second, he had already slammed his palm on the chest of the creature up to 100 times. He kept aiming for the same spot despite the fact it was barely having any effect on the sturdy body of this creature. The others joined as well, sending multiple strikes. The body of the creature suddenly glowed up immensely as it began to regain color forcefully in midair. Boom! A charge blasted forth from it, sending all of them tumbling backwards. Gustav pushed his palm forward, constructing a gravitational barrier before him to prevent the blast from making contact with him. Bam! It landed right in front of Eldris, who was no longer able to extend the colorless world towards it. As it swung out, EES vortex had already opened up and swallowed Eldris before contact could be made. The mixed breed angrily jumped forward, heading for EB. Gustav wasn't interested in participating in this fight because he wanted to confirm something. EE pushed his hand forward, causing the beast to be swallowed up by a vortex that teleported it to EES back. The creature had a confused look as it appeared in a different spot, only for it to feel a hand on its head. Truin, EE had climbed onto the shoulder of the creature and placed his hand on its head. A reddish-colored vortex appeared around the neck of the creature like a collar and began shrinking in size. The creature began thrashing around as it felt what was happening, but EE latched on strongly. A vortex opened up beneath the feet of the creature, causing it to sink in a bit before getting trapped there. The creature reached out its hands to grab EE so it could forcefully rip him off its shoulders, but then Eldris and Dark Falco appeared on its left and right side respectively. Eldris grabbed hold of its left arm while Falco grabbed hold of its right. It was slowly starting to overpower them, but then Rhea and Timi appeared on the right and left as well, assisting both of them. They managed to hold the creature in place till the red vortex EE conjured and shrunk completely, causing the creature's head to be yanked off. Blood jetted out crazily, but then the creature wasn't dead yet. With its headless figure, it swung all four of them away and turned to swing at EB, who had just fallen to the ground with a nauseous look. Swoosh, a burst of wind blasted across the place as Gustav's figure arrived behind the mixed breed, and he sent it hurtling towards the wall with a fist. Bang! You good? Gustav asked as he stretched out his hand to pull EE up. How the hell is that foo asterisk cur still able to move? EE voiced out with a tone of disbelief. Chapter 866. Chapter 866. EES Unstoppable Ability. How the hell is that foo asterisk cur still able to move? EE voiced out with a tone of disbelief. This was the first time he had seen any mixed breed move after getting decapitated. He wasn't the only one shocked. The others were just as shocked. After slamming into the wall, the creature pulled itself out of the hole that was created and began to charge toward Gustav while blood was still jetting out of its empty neck area. Sprint has been activated. Gustav dashed forward and leaped upwards, somersaulting in midair as the creature's claws missed him by a few inches. A spherical orb appeared in Gustav's palm as he was flying above the creature, which he pushed down into its bleeding neck before flying past it across the air. Weird sounds rang out as the orb forced its way down the bloody throat of the creature, causing its neck area to bloat immensely. After landing several 100 feet away, Gustav gave the boys signal to distance themselves while the creature held onto its headless neck, trying to stop the orb from going further down. EE, who had turned around to puke, was unable to move away or create any vortex for them. So Gustav stomped on the ground. Shrilk, diamond-like stones protruded from the ground in a line-up, spreading and reaching where the others were. In a few moments, it created a tall wall behind them, blocking them from the creature. Gustav leaped backward, leaving more gap between himself and the creature before also creating an Iroh silk wall in front of himself. At this point, the mixed breed was still holding onto its neck, but the orb was close to the internal walls of its chest area. Gustav looked from beyond the barricade with god eyes and snapped his finger. Pa! An immense dark purplish and red-colored blast rang out as destructive waves of energy spread across the place. Boom! It was so powerful the ground quaked immensely, and even when the waves hit the Iroh silk barriers Gustav had created, some chunks got blasted away despite their toughness. The body of the mixed breed got blasted into multiple pieces and scattered across the place as a crater was left in the middle of the ground along with cracks that spread for over 1,000 feet radius. After many seconds, the place returned to tranquility as the debris flying across the air slowly began to clear up. The Iro silk sank back into the ground as Gustav and the boys slowly walked forward. He had just finished emptying the contents of his stomach, so his face looked quite pale. Eldris tapped on his back while comforting him, and Falco passed him some water. Gustav looked up ahead at the location of impact and could barely see any body parts left where the creature was initially standing. +5,000,000 EXP. Just like the last time, Gustav got a lot of EXP from this, but he still couldn't take the form of this creature. He had reached the limit for acquiring mixed breed bloodlines. He could still acquire mixed bloodlines, but he already had way too many mixed breeds he could transform into, and now it had reached the limit. The only way for him to get rid of one was by transferring it somewhere else, because it was impossible to use combination with mixed breeds bloodline like the way he did with that, or mixed bloods. Combination would only work in a battle where he got to combine several transformations, which resulted in ultimate combination, unlike combining mixed bloods bloodline, where it could turn into an entirely different bloodline. It was still disappointing for him, since this cosmic armadillo had a lot of uses, but there was nowhere to transfer any mixed breed bloodline to at the moment. Normally, this blast would barely affect it if Gustav hadn't shoved the orb down its throat. "You good?" Gustav voiced out as he approached. Yeah. It just felt gut-wrenching, E said while wiping his mouth with his sleeves after blowing air into both cheeks. You'll be okay," Gustav voiced out with a smile. "Yeah, I just decapitated a level 90 mixed breed, even though the F** Kurt took me by surprise and didn't die," E voiced out before laughing lightly. Everyone understood that E had mentioned opening a vortex within or around a person or a living creature, and how it usually felt for him. He had killed someone by opening a vortex within them before, and he felt everything the person felt. It was never nice because at that moment he would connect to the being, and that was the same thing that happened a while ago after he decapitated the creature, which was why he reacted in the way he did. EE's ability was actually very powerful. He could practically destroy anyone, but it was never a nice feeling whenever he used it in this way, so he only ever did. So, as a last resort. Gustav didn't want to join them in fighting all this time because he wanted to see Ebe use his ability like this, and also wanted to see the guys defeat a powerful creature like this without his input. He was satisfied with their performance, and was assured they'd never be dead weight when they went on missions together. "We cleared the dungeon, guys," Falco voiced out with an excited tone. "Yeah." Rhea clenched his fist and yelled out as everyone had smiles on their faces. Before they left, Gustav turned around to stare at the end of the floor. God Eyes has been activated. His sight passed through multiple layers of walls and kept going down till it arrived at another floor where a mighty altar could be seen with a massive creature chained to a towering icicle. "I see you, Tabitha. We'll discuss one day if I ever come back here," Gustav muttered. "Sure, kid." Gustav was in his room for the rest of the day, preparing to leave camp the next day. Chapter 867. Miss Amy's hidden message. He had no idea how it was leaked, but the entire camp knew Gustav was leaving for his next mission the next day. A lot of them were still trying to befriend him, so they tried to get some kind of parting gift and give it to him, but Gustav had purposely refrained from leaving his room for the rest of the day, so he was able to avoid them. He held on to a small fingernail-sized device and placed it on the bed beside him. "Why did Great Ears Anatus ask me to play this only when I'm alone?" he voiced out loud with a look of suspicion. This was supposed to be where more information about his mission was computed, so he still had to study it. However, he felt a little suspicious when Great Ears Anatus mentioned he should only check it when he was alone. It was normal not to play such in public, since it was a personal mission, so why did Great Ears Anatus feel the need to specify it? Gustav also felt he might also be reading into things too much, but it didn't matter, since he would be checking it now anyways. He proceeded to tap on the device, causing holographic footage to appear in midair. This holographic footage displayed information about the mission, just as it was supposed to. More details were being displayed, and some of them emphasized things Gradiers and Natus initially gave a brief explanation on. Gustav took note of these pieces of information one after the other, which included not just different locations in Mycenite City, but also the abilities of everyone in the main Vertigan family. Gustav found out that Vaughn's family was fairly close to the main family and was the third revered branch of the family. There were also two more before them that was well revered, since these branches had a few mixed bloods who were already a part of the MBO. Cousins, half-cousins, brothers, sisters, uncles, aunts, step-aunts, grandmothers, grandfathers, etc. You could find all these and more in the Vertigan family. There happened to be a particular location in the city where all of them were situated that took up half the city because of their size. The person who was meant to become the next family head, Stark Vertigan, happened to be quite a powerful mixed blood at such a young age, but he was never interested in joining the MBO despite how talented he was. Gustav checked on more information about him and realized he was quite popular in the family, not just because of his title as the next head, but also due to some feats he had performed in the past. It took up to 2 hours before the different footage being displayed about more information on the Vertigan family finally ended. "Oh, so there was nothing then," Gustav voiced out after it ended without anything suspicious happening. However, he seemed to have spoken too soon, as the holographic image that was clearing up suddenly glitched repeatedly. Srarer, in the next moment, it changed into a footage. "Miss Amy," Gustav voiced out with a surprised expression as a portrait of Miss Amy appeared on the holographic projection. "Visit Riedel. Me for extra chapters. Gustav, by the time you'll be seeing this, he'll already be gone. This means he'll be one step closer to achieving his goals. He managed to get me to a certain extent, but not to worry, he'll be fine," Miss Amy began voicing out. It was obvious this was pre-recorded footage with the way she was speaking. "So she did leave a message for me," Gustav said internally as he focused on the footage. "You have to kill him. He's close to achieving his plans. So I want you to kill him since I currently cannot do it myself," Miss Amy voiced out. "Earth is no longer conducive for me, and it's all his doing. I am looking for a way to reverse what he did, but by the time I successfully do so, he might have already achieved his plans. I left this for you because you're the only person I can trust with such a mission. I cannot inform any other person on Earth, or it will cause adverse effects." "I know you can do it, little rascal." Miss Amy smiled at the last sentence as her face began to turn gray. "I need to leave now. Make sure you kill young Joe." The instant she finished saying this, the footage scrambled and disappeared altogether. Towards the middle, Gustav kept wondering who she wanted him to kill, but at the end, his face lit up with confusion as she mentioned young Joe. Miss Amy had stopped Gustav from going after young Joe multiple times, claiming he had different protection methods, and she also mentioned how she couldn't outright kill him because it would cause problems. Now that she was telling him to kill young Joe, he figured whatever she found out before leaving must have been very messed up. So messed up, she decided to disregard everything and decided that at this point young Joe just had to die. She left because of him? Gustav voiced out with a tone of disbelief. He recalled seeing her face turn grayish when she mentioned there was no time left. Young Joe was just a weak mixed blood from what Gustav remembered, but his assets and connections and background made him a force to be reckoned with. If he was able to pull such a thing off with Miss Amy, Gustav could no longer underestimate his intelligence. It was one thing to have a lot at his disposal due to background, and it was another thing to be intelligent enough to use all that to achieve your goals. He even managed to send Miss Amy packing. Everyone thought Miss Amy was infected with the so-called gray particle from the city she saved. They had no idea it was due to young Joe, who had successfully plotted against Miss Amy. "Well, I've been wanting to kill him for a long time, and now I have more reason to do so." Gustav's face turned cold as he spat out. Chapter 868. Off to Mycenite City. "Well, I've been wanting to kill him for a long time, and now I have more reason to do so." Gustav's face turned cold as he spat out. Gustav had actually been using the sacred jewel to secretly spy on young Joe sometimes, and he had noted a few things. The sacred jewel could show footage of any place, so long as Gustav could direct it, so Gustav had occasionally checked the household of the Joss as well as where their company was located in Plankton City and Jung's office. However, he hadn't found anything of real substance except for maybe a few suspicious movements and disappearance. He couldn't ask the sacred jewel to spy on places he had no idea about, which was why he still hadn't found anything substantial even after spying on Jung a few times. Young Joe wasn't so stupid that he would engage in his suspicious activities in known places like his father's industrial areas or even his own place. He would always pick somewhere shady and well hidden. So long as Gustav didn't know where to look, it was impossible for the sacred jewel to spy on such places. I still need to find out what he's up to and devise the best way of killing him. Gustav voiced out with a contemplative expression. Gustav had decided that he would kill young Joe no matter what. He just needed evidence that young Joe had been up to something that was detrimental towards the earth, so killing him would be justified if it ever got revealed. At this point, Gustav didn't care about his backing or who was protecting Jung. Miss Amy had said he had to die, so he had to die. True in, the sacred jewel suddenly appeared in front of him. The flicker of fluorescent-colored light within it had become as large as half a baby's palm at the moment. "I want you to check young Joss' office once more," Gustav voiced out. The flicker of fluorescent light within it suddenly dimmed and disappeared before the entire circular surface turned white. A footage of Jung's office was displayed in the next instant. It was quite large with a luxurious-looking desk at the right corner and arts on the wall. There was no one within the premises. "Can you keep tabs? Record this particular location. And don't stop recording even when anyone comes in until I tell you to stop. Don't stop," Gustav commanded. The sacred jewel disappeared in the next instant. Gustav needed eyes to be on one of the environments where Jung frequented 24/7. He couldn't decide to keep an eye on the office himself for long, so the sacred jewel was going to record all the happenings within the office for the next few days, and after he had left camp, he would play back some of the footage. Gustav's plan was to at least spot some type of clue or anything that could help him against young Joe. He already knew young Joe wouldn't do anything suspicious within his office, but at the very least it was possible to find something that could help. Maybe with this he could find out what young Joe did to Miss Amy and what he was plotting. Young Joe. A silent rage was slowly building up within Gustav as he calmly voiced out his name. "Visit Riedel. Me for extra chapters." He had to quickly deal with his current mission, so he could handle this afterwards, but he actually wished he could go after young Joe right away. "You will be sharing the same fate with your little brother soon," Gustav swore underneath his breath. The rest of the night went by very quickly, and the next morning arrived. Gustav was ready to go as early as 5 a.m. in the morning. He had to move to the main hall, where he would go through the mirror teleportation checkpoint that led to the massive ship-like platform in the middle of the ocean. All his friends had come out to bid him farewell, including the girls. Angie shared a passionate hug with him before headed towards the main hall. She was too shy to kiss him in front of everyone. Matilda, Vera, Elevra, and Glade, as well, were all present. And the boys shared fist bumps with Gustav and agreed to meet up in the outside world when they finished over here, as well, whether or not Gustav decided to participate in ISOP. Minutes later, Gustav was heading through the teleportation mirror after getting cleared to leave the camp. He turned around and looked at the place with God eyes activated. For all he knew, this might be the last time he would be here, except he had some business with the MBO camp. As of this point, he was done training in the MBO camp. He turned around and headed in through the mirror before arriving on the massive platform gliding atop the ocean. The moment he went through, just like before, one could see several building-like structures on this platform and many MBO officers moving around the place. Up ahead, many aircraft were parked with different sizes, all having the MBO emblem crafted on their sides. Gustav only moved forward for a bit before an officer wearing pilot uniform approached him. "Officer Crimson, J. Bach, your pilot," he voiced out with a respectful tone while reaching out to shake Gustav. Gustav received his handshake, and the male officer, who had a black alligator-like head, led Gustav towards his aircraft. It was among the most luxurious-looking ones in amongst all the aircraft, with only a few passenger seats. Gustav settled down in no time, and they took off. Mycenite City was on the other side of the world, which originally would take no less than 6 hours of flying to get there, but this particular aircraft was pretty fast, so the time was cut in half. Fulham, it glided off into the sky a few moments after the pilot started the engine. The aircraft was moving so fast, it already broke the sound barrier in a couple of seconds. See Chapter 869, arriving in the Vertigan premises S. Despite how immensely fast it was moving, everything seemed smooth. It was almost like turbulences were being cleared for them to move with ease. Gustav just sat in one of the passenger seats strapped in, and kept going through some of the information for this mission in his head. Row? At the same time, his mind was alert as he recalled his last time flying out of camp. Internally, he was hoping he got attacked again so he could finally lay his hands on evidence that would be traced back to young Joe. Surprisingly, the travel went smoothly, and in just 2 hours, they had nearly reached the other side of Earth. Although Gustav now had flight ability, he knew he could never match up to the speed of this aircraft, at least not now. The only person he knew capable of moving even faster was Miss Amy, as he recalled that when she was unsealed, she moved like she was teleporting. Gustav could never forget the day Miss Amy took him almost halfway across the world in barely a few seconds and displayed her true strength to him. Sometimes he forget that Miss Amy was one of the most powerful beings in the universe presently. Destroying a planet was truly something she could do if she willed it, but then young Joe, who was significantly weaker, had managed to get the better of her. This proved that intelligence was truly powerful in a sense. Although he knew young Joss was more of scheming, nevertheless, it was still a part of intelligence. Gustav just had to beat him at his own game, or literally beat him to death. After another hour went by, the aircraft began to lose altitude as they took a particular route in the sky. Gustav could feel they had descended by a few thousand feet compared to their initial height. He looked at the holographic monitor which displayed the outside and could see a kind of thick fog up ahead blocking the entire sky. The pilot kept moving and flew straight into it. Few moments later they phased through the fog, and what appeared in their line of sight was an island situated in the middle of the ocean. No land could be seen at all in the surroundings except for this particular island, which looked well structured. One could already see tall buildings and well-constructed paths from this height in the sky. Mountains, trees, and other natural views looked good from the sky. The aircraft had significantly slowed down as it descended at this point. Fwai'i Gustav could see the city on this island better as they glided above the structures towards the eastern part. Vita 001 is cleared for landing. A voice was heard through the communication device on the aircraft as they closed in on a part of the city that looked way more better structured than the others. Roy? Eh? A few seconds later, they landed in a private airspace. Gustav got off the aircraft, and a few people were already waiting for him up ahead. Welcome to Mycenite City, Officer Crimson. A dark-skinned woman who looked no older than the age of 30 voiced out as she walked towards Gustav. Visit Riedel. Me for extra chapters. Thank you, Gustav said as he received her handshake. There were 2 other men beside her, who also welcomed Gustav as well. I am Madame Salora Vertigan, and these are Marklin and Jude, she said with a respectful tone. Gustav recognized all 3 of them from the information he had gotten on the family recently. Madame Salora was the direct aunt of the next head of the family, while the other 2 Marklin and Jude Vertigan were his uncles from his mother's side. They were important members of the main Vertigan household, and they had come here to meet with Gustav directly. Some guards were positioned around the place. It would seem they were followed around by guards, even though they were currently within the Vertigan premises. "This is the Vertigan hangar. Please come with us to the main household," Madame Solora said, while gesturing for Gustav to follow them. "Sure," Gustav responded as they moved towards one of the small land vehicles parked at the side. There were about 3 of them, and Gustav got into the first one with Madame Solora while the other 2 got into the next one, and the last one was occupied by the guards. As they drove off, Gustav looked around. The runway of the private hangar area was quite massive. There were also multiple private aircraft parked by the sides, all looking luxurious with some engineers attending to 1 or 2. There was no doubt that the Vertigan family was very wealthy. They probably had a spacecraft as well, since it was not news that very rich families could own spacecraft if they wanted to. The entire Vertigan premises was like a small city itself as they drove for about 12 minutes, bypassing multiple well-structured houses and people moving across the place before arriving at their destination, the main Vertigan family house. Gustav got off the land vehicles with the others as they arrived before this gigantic building that was at least thrice the size of a mansion. It was silver and violet in color with the golden statue of a 3-headed draconic creature in front. This was the most luxurious-looking household Gustav had ever been to, and this wasn't so surprising considering this family was one of the top 3 richest in the entire world. Before this, he had also seen multiple households, and there were at least 1,000 Vertigons living in this Vertigan premises. Everyone he had been seeing all bore some type of resemblance to one another, which depicted they were all blood relatives living in this large city-like premises. Unlike the others, they were also a mixed blood family with a lineage-type bloodline, which was another reason why they were so close-guarded and lived isolated from the rest of the world. It was very rare to find any mixed blood with a lineage-type bloodline because of how families like this liked to keep to themselves and keep the bloodline from getting out of the family. Chapter 870. Doubts of the Vertigons. This was also another reason why a lot of them couldn't be found in the MBO. It was actually a miracle that Vaughn and the others were ever allowed to join the MBO. The surroundings was teeming with all type of guards dressed in the same whitish robe-like outfit with the emblem of the 3-headed draconic figure on their backs. Gustav walked into this massive household with the others where the rest of the main family members were waiting as well. The living room was so massive, it made Gustav wonder how many people lived within. He only had information on the family members, but they still had chefs, maids, cleaners, guards, and butlers. He reckoned over 50 people could gather in this living room, and there'd still be enough space for more. Expensive artistic pieces on the wall, chandeliers made from raw diamonds and rare stones, pieces of furniture that looked like they'd sell for millions. Gustav decided to stop observing the household for now, as he sat on one of the sofas. The entire main household was gathering here. It looked like his arrival was going to make them hold a meeting. In a few seconds, 16 Vertigons had gathered in the living room. Gustav could recognize every single one of them. 3 children of the previous head who were all women, 4 uncles and aunts, which included the ones who welcomed Gustav upon arrival, 4 grandparents, 2 male and female, and lastly the acting head of the household, Madame Lillian. Madame Lillian, just like Madame Solora, was also dark-skinned, but the others had lighter skin tones, yet they still bore some kind of resemblance to each other. Some of them greeted Gustav when they saw him, while others just stared at him with inexplicable looks and took their seats. "Where is Stark?" Madame Lillian voiced out after noticing that one person was still missing. "I have sent a butler to inform him about the meeting," one of the uncles who had a mixture of white and black hair voiced out. "I would like you to go and hasten him up. We cannot keep Officer Crimson here waiting like this. she voiced out to the uncle, who responded by nodding and standing to his feet. He walked towards the south side, where one of the diamond-structured stairways was located, and began moving up. "My apologies, Officer Crimson, for taking up your time like this," Madame Lillian said with an apologetic tone. "No worries," Gustav responded with an unbothered tone. He wasn't in any way offended, as this was a part of his mission after all. The others also looked at him like they were scrutinizing him. This officer seems quite young. Hopefully he is capable enough. Most of them had thoughts similar to this, and some of them were just waiting to ask Gustav all sort of questions when the meeting begins. Minutes later, the uncle who had left earlier arrived back alone. Young nephew Stark seems currently indisposed. He claims he can't attend because he is working on something, and we should just go on without him, he voiced out while taking his seat. Madame Lillian had a wry look on her face as she sighed. Gustav could see the frustration on her face, which made it seem like this wasn't the first time something of this sort was happening. "Let's just go on then," she said with a look of defeat. "Welcome once again, Officer Crimson. I believe you have been briefed on our current predicament," she said to Gustav. "Visit Riedel. Me for extra chapters." "Yes. According to the information I received, I have to help you find the original emblem of your family," Gustav stated. "Correct. You see, this emblem is a symbol, and without it, Stark can't rule the family in the future. We've pushed the timing of the new head appointment several times because we have been unable to find it with our capabilities. So we believe the MBO sending you here. You must be capable enough," she said lengthily. "No worries, I'll start conducting my investigation as soon as possible to find it. If the information I got about it is accurate, and truly only a real member of the main household can activate its power, then it would very much lose its value if it was taken away from this island. I believe it's still here. The only issue will be how to pinpoint its exact location," Gustav said with a contemplative look. Some of them seemed to agree with Gustav's words and nodded their heads, while some still had unimpressed looks. "The MBO sent a kid to do a man's job? What qualifications does this kid have that makes you lot believe he can find the emblem?" One of the uncles voiced out with a tone of disagreement. "Oh, Bila, being in the MBO at such a young age is enough capability, is it not?" Madame Solora said on behalf of Gustav. "It is not," Bila, who happened to be the second uncle, voiced out. "Being young also means lacking in experience. The MBO should have sent us someone who has handled similar cases before. We cannot have a youngster wasting our time." Another aunt voiced out in agreement to Bila's words. "I don't think the MBO would send someone who is incapable of handling the situation," one of the three sisters of Stark voiced out. "Little niece, you seem not to know that this kid just came here straight from the MBO camp, which means he is still just a cadet, or he just finished. That screams inexperience," Uncle Bila voiced out again, causing the others' eyes to widen. Those who didn't initially doubt Gustav's capabilities began to doubt after hearing this. "Is this true?" one of the uncles asked after hearing that. "Absolutely correct. I, in fact, just completed my MBO training," Gustav finally responded with an unbothered tone. "What is the MBO thinking sending us an inexperienced officer? We need to switch and get a better one right now." Some of the family members instantly voiced out their dissatisfactions after hearing that. "What is your bloodline rank, kid?" one of them asked. Chapter 871, Suspicious Main Family. What is your bloodline rank, kid? one of them asked. "Am currently an Echo ranked," Gustav responded. Chatter, chatter, chatter. "This is ridiculous. We need at least a kilo ranked mixed blood to take care of this case. We need a replacement immediately." Most of the family members were immediately against Gustav being the officer to handle the case the moment these were revealed. They continued to voice out their disagreements loudly until the current acting head finally spoke up. "Quiet, you lots," she stated with a strong tone, causing the chatter to die down. "Madame Lillian, as you know, the matter is crucial. Are we really going to rely on this new officer? Uncle Bila asked while giving Gustav another glance of disapproval. Visit to L-World. Discover_new novels. Gustav just remained seated with an unbothered look. Contrary to their expectations, he wasn't trying to defend himself. He just looked calm and uncaring, which made some of them feel a little weird. Some of them also felt he might not want to say anything because he was afraid of pissing off such a big family like theirs, but his look of calmness made them feel unnerved. Gustav was in no way bothered because if they decided to take him off the case, he could ditch completing an MBO mission in the meantime and focus on trying to destroy young Joe. Although he was truly fascinated about the lineage bloodline of the Vertigons, he didn't mind pushing that aside for something more important, especially when it regarded someone he cared about deeply. You all are just yapping away without knowing who exactly Officer Crimson is, Madame Lillian voiced out. Everyone turned to face her with looks of confusion after hearing that. This young man right here. Officer Crimson was already appointed as an MBO officer from the moment he was admitted into the MBO camp. Not only is he a major lieutenant officer, but he also has the hero title since he saved Burning Sand City from potential havoc that could cause a planet-wide catastrophe. At this point, everyone had looks of astonishment after hearing Madame Lillian narrate Gustav's feats. They turned to stare at Gustav in new light, feeling like they now understood where the calmness and unbothered expression was coming from. This same officer has several other feats to his name and has been completing 5-star ranked missions in the MBO since his first year admitted to the MBO camp. I believe he isn't even 20 years old yet, and he's already an Echo-ranked mixed blood. Should I go on? Madame Lillian had a look of annoyance on her face as she stared at her family members after speaking. Some of them had slight looks of embarrassment after hearing all this since they spoke out loud without even knowing more about Gustav. Bila, who started all this, didn't do his research on Gustav well, or maybe he did, and just decided to only voice out the unfavorable parts. New novel_chap_tours are published here. L-World. No wonder he looks so cocky, Uncle Bila said internally as he stared at Gustav, who in turn made eye contact with him. Gustav stared down at Bila without flinching even once, despite the fact that this uncle seemed to be a quite powerful mixed blood as well. Uncle Bila had to look away after seeing how Gustav was unflinching. I apologize for that, Officer Crimson, Madame Lillian stated with a respectful tone. It's fine, but the moment anyone doubts my capabilities again, it'll leave you lots to handle the situation on your own, Gustav replied with a strong tone. At this point, one of the 3 sisters stood to her feet and began heading towards the stairway. Julie, where are you going? Madame Lillian asked. I'm coming, Mum. I'll get brother down in a few, trust me, she said with a smile before storming off. Madame Lillian was unable to ask her more because she was already halfway through the stairways before they knew it. She looked even more embarrassed, feeling like Gustav would see their great family as the disordered type, but Gustav didn't really care about all these. I recall the emblem was well kept. Can you tell me when it was found missing and where it disappeared from? Gustav decided to get back into business as he asked, try the L-World. COM platform_ for the most advanced _reading experience. Please come with me to our private storage vault, Madame Lillian said while standing to her feet. Gustav got up and followed after her down the west side of the living room, which led to an hallway. Some of the family members followed after them as they moved towards a part of the massive household. A few minutes later, Gustav was standing inside a large space luxuriously designed with silver color and lighting. It was like being inside an expensive new world with all sort of items arranged across the place. There were weapons, rare stones, expensive jewelry, artifacts, and all sorts of things stored in this vault room. Gustav estimated that the items here would be worth billions. The space was larger than a football pitch, and they walked in the midst of these arranged items. There was a golden and silver pair of metallic-looking wings up ahead as well. It was very massive, and Gustav wondered why this would be needed when every single one of them could fly after undergoing transformation with their bloodlines. Gustav felt this item had some unique properties, but there were many other items with unique properties here as well. Up ahead, a massive C-shaped platform could be seen floating. Unlike the others, it was placed there separately and isolated at the top, like it was more important than the rest. However, it was empty. From what Gustav could see, the outline of the sea was supposed to have something embedded within. This is where the emblem was kept after our previous head, my husband, passed, Madame Lillian voiced out while gesturing at the C-shaped platform up ahead. My C, Gustav said while looking around. God Eyes has been activated. Visit L-World. COM for a better reading experience. Gustav looked around while God Eyes was activated. The C-shaped platform up ahead looked like a well-crafted restraint that was capable of locking something in. Chapter 872 Meeting Stark. Gustav was able to peer into it and note its properties well. He turned to the side and scrutinized the entire space. Not only was the wall so thick that he had to peer at a particular for a longer period to see through, but even the entrance was also crafted in such a way that it would be impossible for just anyone to get in here. I need a list of everyone who has access to this place, Gustav said while deactivating God Eyes. Oh, it's just us main members of the family. Except for the little ones below 16 years of age, Madame Lillian answered instantly. Interesting. So only 17 of you have access to this place, and it can't be accessed by other branches of the family, Gustav said with a slightly low voice. You understand what I'm getting at, right? He added, it's impossible. Someone else must have found a way to get access. There's no way anyone amongst us could do such a thing, Uncle Bela voiced out with a look of annoyance after hearing Gustav speak. You see, I didn't say nothing yet. Why are you getting so defensive? Gustav asked with a look of ridicule. Of course, I'd get defensive when you're about to make speculations about one of us committing such a treacherous act. It affects us too, so no one among us will be stupid enough to do that, Uncle Bela said with a strong tone. He's right. It's not possible for the culprit to be among any one of us. It affects everyone. Also because it got missing at a time when we were on a vacation outside the island together. Only the guards were left to protect the main household, and when we got back it was already missing, Madame Salora voiced out from the side. Everyone wants Stark to become the head of the family right away. No one would want to try such, Madame Lillian added as well. I see, but does Stark want to become the family head, though? Gustav asked, and what came next was a few seconds of silence. Their looks gave Gustav the answer to the question. Just as Gustav was about to speak again, two people walked through the entrance of the vault. Goodness, it truly is you. A masculine voice filled with shock and astonishment was heard from up ahead as the two approached. Gustav stared at the person who had just spoken. It was the dark-skinned young man who looked no older than 18 years of age. He had curly-looking hair with braids at the front that reached down to his chin area. Beside him was a girl who looked a bit older, but they bore semblance to each other. She had long, dark hair and beautiful brown skin. This was the same girl that left the living room earlier, Julie. Stark, I thought he wouldn't come out of his room. The other family members were surprised as they spotted Stark walking toward them. Stark arrived in front of Gustav and held his hand before shaking it himself. I'm a huge fan, Officer Crimson, he said with a look of excitement. Oh, good to meet you, Stark. Gustav was a bit surprised that Stark knew him, considering the others mostly had no idea who he was when he arrived here. My goodness, I can't believe you were put on this case. I'm sorry I didn't show up earlier, Stark voiced out while still shaking Gustav's hand. The others in the vicinity were surprised as they watched this exchange because it seemed like Stark showed himself after being made aware of Gustav's presence. Originally, Stark wouldn't even show up for any meeting, even at times when his mother went in person to call him, but now he was showing so much interest in a person. Stark, I thought you said you were busy. The uncle who went to call Stark out earlier voiced out. Yeah, Uncle Ronnie, am less busy now, haha, he laughed lightly. Everyone looked at him like they knew he was just messing around, and only showed up because he found out it was Gustav. This led them to believe they had truly looked down on Gustav if Stark of all people could be turned into such a fanboy. You guys don't know Gustav Crimson? He is most powerful new generation, mixed blood. Stark voiced out after he felt he was being judged by their eyes. Madame Lillian pointed out something similar earlier. One of them stated in response, "We truly underestimated this kid. He must have a lot of influence in the outside world." Some of them had thoughts similar to this. "I have followed all your achievements. It's great to finally meet you in person," Stark voiced out again. "Yeah, it's good to meet you too. I believe you're the next head of this family," Gustav said while scrutinizing Stark's reaction. "Ooh, yep, they want me to be, so I guess I am," Stark responded with a wry smile. "Good. They'll be needing your help in the future to find the missing emblem. Can I count on you to be of help?" Gustav asked. Sure, anything you need," Stark responded with a look of delight. "All right, I'll get down to work immediately, but first," Gustav said as he walked towards the C-shaped floating platform up ahead. Everyone stared at him, wondering what he wanted to do. Gustav arrived below it and activated Hover. Hover has been activated. He floated upwards while bringing out something that looked like a platinum-colored card and placed it before the C-shaped platform. "It's been a month, but it should at least have some residual energy," Gustav thought as he waited. A few moments later, the platinum-colored card slowly transformed into a pale yellow color with hints of red. "Good. Now I can properly start the mission," Gustav said internally while descending with the card in his grasp. "What did you just do?" Uncle Bila asked with a suspicious tone. "A necessary procedure is all. I will only consult with Madame Lillian and the next family head as I make my investigations," Gustav said, as his eyes turned into slits. "What do you mean by that?" Another one of the aunties asked. Chapter 873, ruling out the most suspicious ones. "What do you mean by that?" Another one of the aunties asked. "I don't trust the rest of you, so am only going to consult with the two of them," Gustav explained his intentions. "What sort of joke are you making?" Uncle Bila voiced out. "It is no joke. You are all suspects," Gustav said while walking forward calmly. "Watch your tone, your lad. Don't make senseless accusations," Uncle Ronnie voiced out as well. "Okay, you are all suspects," Gustav repeated the same statement, causing most of them to show looks of annoyance and discontent. "Uncles, aunts, let's all relax. There's no reason to get riled up, just let him do his job," Stark stated while trying to make the tense atmosphere calm a little. "Officer Crimson, we've prepared a good accommodation within the household for you," Madame Lillian voiced out with a smile. "Julie, please show Officer Crimson to his room," she added while gesturing at her daughter, who had just arrived with Stark a while ago. Julie nodded and asked Gustav to follow her. "I'll settle in for now and begin investigations a little later. Don't mind my presence in this house. I could be anywhere at any time," Gustav said as he walked away with Julie. "Will he have access to everywhere?" Uncle Bila asked. "So long as he is in this household and working on the issue, then yes," Madame Lillian answered. "And I don't want to hear any complaints from any one of you," she added before anyone could voice out their complaints. Uncle Bila and a few others had looks of dissatisfaction on their faces, but after hearing that, they kept quiet. "I don't have any issues with that. Anyways, Mom, uncles, aunts, see you later, I gotta go," Stark stated before walking away. "We still have things to discuss," Madame Lillian yelled out, but Stark had already zoomed out of the vault room. She shook her head and let out a frustrated sigh before gesturing for the others to follow her back to the living room. Gustav walked along a wide corridor that led towards the far east of the household. They were currently one floor up, as Julie led him towards the room that was prepared for him. Julie was truly a beautiful brown-skinned lady with a voluptuous rear view and attractive bearing. She walked by Gustav's side with her hands joined together in front of her. "I hope you enjoy your stay here," she said with a smile. "I'm not here to enjoy my stay. I'm here to work," Gustav responded bluntly without a change in expression. "I guess what they say about you is true," she said with a light chuckle. Gustav mumbled. "I know you're here to work, but you could loosen up a bit. Life is more fun when you're being less grumpy," Julie said with a gentle tone. "What do you know about having a fun life? You can't even leave your own house without supervision. Talk more of this island you all have isolated yourselves away in," Gustav voiced out with an uncaring tone, causing Julie's face to stifle up a bit. "Ouch. Well, I guess you were kind of right. I am mentioning having a fun life when my life is the way it is, but you have to understand that there's nothing I can do to change this. The Vertigan family has always been like this," Julie said with a wry smile. "Sure. Thanks for the concern. I'll loosen up when I get the job done," Gustav stated as they arrived at the end of the corridor. Julie smiled at his response, not offended by what he had just said. Mycenite City was mostly cut off from the rest of the world, and the Vertigan family did not like to really get involved in worldly matters unless the MBO or the world government needed their help. The family was not only powerful in resources, but they also had 2 alpha-ranked mixed bloods from their family, as well as hundreds of mixed bloods within the Kilo to Delta rank. They were practically a powerful private army, and considering how strong a lineage bloodline is, it was no doubt that they could truly take on almost any situation. No one would dare to attack Mycenite City, both mixed blood terrorists or any form of adversity, since everyone knew just how much of a strong collective force they were. Despite being below the Kilo rank, Gustav was sent here because the current situation wasn't one that only required strength. Besides, the main family was trying to keep the situation under the wraps, so they wouldn't want others to be involved. Julie came to know of Gustav through Stark, who was always invested in the outside world situations. He followed the rise of Gustav from the MBO test phases down to the Burning Sands issue. Amongst the 3 sisters, Julie was the closest to him, so he would open up about how he wanted to meet Gustav one day, and maybe team up with him to fight bad guys or something. "Hey, erase your room. It automatically gives you access, so there's no need for any key card," Julie said as they arrived in front of the last room at the end of the corridor. Just as Julie mentioned, the moment Gustav stood in front of the door, it slid open for him. "My room is at the other end. It's the second door by the left. Don't hesitate to reach out if you need any help," she said with a gentle tone that somewhat reminded Gustav of Angie. "I will. Thank you," Gustav said before walking into his room. He was still surprised that she wasn't pissed after everything he said. He had mentioned all of them were suspects and even threw her off when she said he should loosen up a bit, yet she didn't seem angry or treat him with contempt after all that. Gustav looked around the room he had just gotten into. It was practically a house of its own. There was a small living room space with sofas and a holographic screen that was displaying some cartoons. The room corner also had a massive holographic screen and calming dim lights, a king-sized bed, and so many decorations with artistic figures on the walls. This was way more luxurious than the penthouse the MBO rented for him during his stay in Burning Sands City. "I will. Thank you," Gustav said before walking into his room. He was still surprised that she wasn't pissed after everything he said. He had mentioned all of them were suspects and even threw her off when she said he should loosen up a bit. Yet she didn't seem angry or treat him with contempt after all that. Gustav looked around the room he had just gotten into. It was practically a house of its own. There was a small living room space with sofas and a holographic screen that was displaying some cartoons. The room corner also had a massive holographic screen and calming dim lights, a king-sized bed, and so many decorations with artistic figures on the walls. "Good. There are no monitoring devices," he said internally as he deactivated God Eyes. Gustav didn't really care about the luxuriousness of this place. He just moved towards the bed and took a seat on it. In his head, he replayed everything that had happened upon his arrival here, in Mycenite City. Gustav noted the actions, replies, and attitudes of every single family member as he replayed the scenes in his head. Chapter 874, Moving Out Bila, is definitely suspicious, being so defensive and trying to get rid of me at the start. Ronnie seemed calm and collected and didn't make any weird expressions even after all my provocations. The grandparents barely spoke. Ruling them completely out is not an option, but they're less suspicious than the rest. Madame Salora is also less suspicious as her body language indicates eagerness when I mention the investigation. Stark's three sisters, Julie, Leonera, and Pearl, were also less suspicious as well. Their characters were more like the type that couldn't handle conflicts, except for Julie, who seemed more invested compared to the other two. Gustav continued to note everything he had noticed during the little time he spent with them. His main reason for trying to get on their nerves with his announcement of not trusting anyone was to see how they'd react. Of course, he was being serious when he said all of them were suspects, but this was something he would rather keep to himself instead of saying out. However, at that moment where he mentioned it, his eyes were on every single one of them. But there was something Gustav didn't mention. He was also suspicious of Stark. He had asked if Stark was willing to become the family head, but no one answered. He figured he'd have to get close to Stark to pick to uncover his true desires, and know whether or not this incident was something he could plan. After minutes of outlining everything he had noticed, Gustav had a list of 7 main family members he suspected the most and had been conducting secret investigations on, as well. Of course, there was still a huge probability that this was plotted by other branches of the family, so Gustav would still have to scout the entire Vertigan premises. Then he'd extend his search to the entire city as well. His mission was to find the emblem, and it was still on this island, so he'd have to act as soon as possible before any changes were made. It was a big island, but they called it Mycenite City. There was no other city here. It was just a collective people of a singular city on an island. This made things easier for Gustav. Gustav brought out a card that was yellow with patches of red. This was something he had gotten from Mara. Mara invented this card that read lingering energy from anything, a device, battery, weapon, anything that emitted a form of energy. After reading the energy, the card would react alarmingly when it was within a certain proximity of the source of whatever energy it read. Luckily, there was still lingering energy from the emblem due to where it was kept all this time, so the card was able to read a little. All Gustav had to do now was visit every nook and cranny of the city if he wanted to find the emblem. The only way the card wouldn't react was if the emblem had been buried underground or hidden in a water body, and these were 2 possible scenarios considering they were on an island. Gustav decided to study the map of the city once more before getting to work. It only took him a few moments of glancing through before he could tell the location of every place within the city. Changing out of his MBO outfit, Gustav wore a dark hoodie and pants before moving towards the window. He leapt through the window and activated hover. Hover has been activated. Gustav flew several hundred feet into the air and found out there was a barrier up ahead. So he floated in midair at this point and stared at the massive main Vertigan household from this height. God Eyes has been activated. Gustav knew there was no way the emblem would be hidden in the house, but he still decided to leave no loose ends and scanned every nook and cranny of the house from above using God Eyes. After doing so, he turned around and flew off. Swoosh, Gustav traveled across the air for a few hundred feet before dropping to the ground to walk. Fwai, 2 massive draconic creatures blazed across the sky with immense speed, with their flapping wings making loud, wind-breaking noises. This was a normal occurrence here, as almost every single Vertigan could fly after transformation. The skies would always be filled with these draconic beings flying across the place. Gustav didn't want to arouse any suspicion since he was flying in human form without wings, so He figured using land would be a better option. He proceeded to start scanning household to household across the Vertigan premises with the card in his grasp. It would take some time for him to completely scan the entire premises because it was like a small city in itself. After this, he would still have to move out and scan the city. He's in Mycenite City right now. The raspy, masculine voice of a dark, cloaked figure rang out as he knelt behind a man dressed in a blue business suit. It doesn't matter. He poses no threat to us without his teacher here, the man in a blue business suit voiced out. You do not wish to have him killed anymore? The voice of the cloaked figure rang out with a tone of surprise. Not right now. We should be more focused on the task at hand. Instead, watch Jack and report his every movement to me, the man in a blue business suit commanded. This is a high-ranking assignment, Sir Young. The pay will have to be increased, the cloaked figure voiced out. Just get the job done, young Joe stated before he began walking away. Time to proceed with the next step of this operation. Jack is not so attentive compared to Amy. The most dangerous and alarming part has already been scaled through before his arrival, so getting rid of Amy paid off. So long as he doesn't catch on, everything will continue to go smoothly. Young had a crafty look on his face as he thought while walking away. Chapter 875 Stark's inexplicable strength time to proceed with the next step of this operation. Jack is not so attentive compared to Amy. The most dangerous and alarming part has already been scaled through before his arrival, so getting rid of Amy paid off. So long as he doesn't catch on, everything will continue to go smoothly. Young had a crafty look on his face as he thought while walking away. Two buff figures in dark bodysuit-like outfits phased out of the dark and followed after Young as he walked away in the middle of this dark and dodgy-looking underground space. Mycenite City in a flash. 2 days had already gone by. Gustav had spent all this time scanning across the city from house to house, leaving no stone unturned. The other day, while checking the houses of the other branches of the family, Gustav had overheard some rumors about Stark. Stark was quite powerful for a mixed blood of his age, but even his own family barely saw him. It had been rumored that he was not only antisocial, but also liked to engage in rather strange activities. Whenever he was seen, it would be with different technological items. He barely attended training sessions with the rest of the family, yet not only was his strength still crazily improving, but he would always come to test out weird items on the training grounds whenever he was seen. It was like he had a passion for other things and not the affairs of his family or their current state. This made most branch family members believe he was unserious with the title of the next family head. The previous family head died due to an incurable mixed blood illness about 7 years ago. He was also Stark's father and Madame Lillian's husband. Ever since his death, Madame Lillian had been the acting head due to Stark's young age. Stark's father was said to have been the serious type who had been dabbling in the family affairs since he was little. Some branch members of the family were dissatisfied seeing that his son, who happened to be their next family head, was the polar opposite. Stark's father would always attend training, family meetings, and even reached a high level of their lineage bloodline mastery, becoming a two-headed at the age of 30. For the Vertigo family, there were 3 levels to their lineage bloodline: one-headed, two-headed, and three-headed transformation. The most powerful form for a Vertigan was the three-headed, and being that powerful brought about respect from other members of the family. Most Vertigons never even managed to become two-headed all their lives, and achieving the three-headed form was something that only the head of the families had been able to do for the last 1,000 years with the assistance of the emblem. While it was possible to achieve the three-headed form without the emblem, it was immensely difficult, and it would take a Vertigan all their lives to get to such a point. But once a new head was picked, so long as they had achieved the two-headed form, the emblem would be able to upgrade them to the three-headed form instantly. However, achieving the two-headed form in itself was no minuscule task. Even Stark's father only managed to achieve such at the age of 30, and there were even previous family heads who got to the ages of 50 to 100 before achieving the two-headed form. This common knowledge is what makes everyone still astonished about Stark today, even though he was the opposite of what the family wanted in terms of personality. Stark had achieved the two-headed form from the age of 15, becoming one of the strongest in the entire Maine household. He was paired with others that were older in a duel that happened 2 years back, and he defeated every single one of them. No one could understand how someone who was barely trained was able to achieve this. He was eligible to become the next family head since he was 15, but he was still too young, so the rest of the Maine family members decided to push the date till was 18. Stark turned 18 about a month back, which was also when the emblem went missing. It was obvious at this point that this was some sort of conspiracy to stop Stark from becoming the next head. Even though Madame Lillian had been the acting family head for 7 years now, there had been silent unrest and low exclaims of dissatisfaction amongst the family members. She couldn't pair with the emblem because she was a woman, and also not the true next family head. So controlling the others with the power of the emblem was impossible. With the support of the Maine family members, she had been an authority, but she knew very well that Stark had to become the family head soon to quell any blossoming unrest. At this point, even though Gustav hadn't found the emblem, he had already made investigations to the point that he knew all of the branches of the Vertigan family who were secretly dissatisfied with Stark becoming the next head. Now, he had his eyes on the movement of a particular family branch, and was watching the head of that family branch at the moment. Different Vertigan family branches were tasked with different responsibilities to keep the city flourishing, especially the top-ranked ones, and this particular branch, Calder, was number 4. They handled the infrastructural companies the Vertigan family owned in the city, which of course dealt with building projects. This particular task brought a thought to Gustav's mind. Handling the infrastructure also means they have the capability to hide something underground without the notice of anyone. They have absolute control in this field. There was something else that linked with this thought. Gustav couldn't find the emblem even after searching across the city for 2 days, but the card he had gotten from Mara would not react to the location of the emblem if it was underwater or buried underneath the earth. Today, Gustav followed the family head around, observing his activities and movements all across the city. He supervised several places where projects were ongoing in the city before returning to his office to stay there for the rest of the day. Gustav was unable to obtain any kind of information, but he decided to infiltrate the office within the infrastructural company building. This was a city of mostly powerful mixed bloods, but there were still normal people who lived in the city besides the Vertigons, even though they were not allowed within the Vertigan premises. Gustav had to disguise himself using the identity of a worker to get in. He found his way to the office after some time moving around and hiding his presence at certain points. Vertigons, even though they were not allowed within the Vertigan premises. Gustav had to disguise himself using the identity of a worker to get in. Gustav proceeded to plant a tapping device in the office of this branch family head before leaving. He decided he was going to do this to every one of his suspects and watch them closely from a fixed point. He arrived back in the room he was given later on and started to make new plans after setting up a monitoring screen that was displaying footage from the location he had just tapped. Chapter 876 Nightfall Actions. He arrived back in the room he was given later on and started to make new plans after setting up a monitoring screen that was displaying footage from the location he had just tapped. Thinking about it now, he felt he would need to tap not just the locations they were expected to be at, but themselves as well. I need to be able to see where they are at every given time, Gustav thought. Using life signs tracking would help him see them at certain moments, but using it extensively would drain him of energy, so it wasn't a wise option. I might need to make use of that last resort, but then I will have to make sure I am not spotted while doing it, Gustav voiced out loud as he pulled a 5 feet long weapon out of his storage ring. It was like a sniper weapon, but it glowed a dark blue color and gave off a weird kind of energy. "It'll just need to replace the energy shots and wait for dark," Gustav said as he started to tweak the weapon. He pulled out a blade hidden at the top area and took off the scope as well. He wouldn't be needing that since his eyesight was good enough. After finishing up the necessary change, Gustav was ready to move out, but he still wanted to wait for nightfall first. The only problem should be getting the main family members. Bila is a Delta rank. There is a low possibility of getting him with this. Gustav thought about the only problem currently, since Bila was the strongest amongst the main family members. The two Vertigons who were Alfranked mixed bloods were not from the main family, but they had the title's protectors since they protected the main family for generations. They were mostly not seen on the surface unless there was a huge problem that required their strength, and currently only one of them was on the island. Right now, there was no huge problem that required strength, and they couldn't handle the current situation Gustav was investigating, so he didn't have to worry about them. The main household had some type of barrier, so he couldn't target the members of the household in whatever he was planning at the moment. He'd have to focus on just the family branch members and leaders he was suspicious of. Nightfall arrived soon, and Gustav jumped out the window before flying halfway across Mycenite City. Calm, calm, calm. Knocks were heard at his door a moment later. "Officer Crimson, are you there?" "Calm, calm, calm." The knock mixed with the tone of a masculine figure rang out for several seconds before stopping. "I guess he's busy again. It's been 3 days since anyone last heard from him." Stark sighed as he voiced out. "I really wanted to spend more time in his company," Stark muttered as he stared at Gustav's door, with a slightly dissatisfied look. He had a small breeze-like sound as he turned around to walk away. Stark had a suspicious look as he turned back to stare at the door with his eyes turning yellow with a mixture of red. "No, this is wrong. I shouldn't use my powers this way. He could be naked or something," Stark said as the glow in his eyes began to dim. "But what if he's in trouble? I need to be sure he's okay, so just one peek." Stark gulped down saliva as his eyes glowed up again. His sight turned cloudy, and all of a sudden he could see 360 degrees within Gustav's room. He left the window open. There's enough air conditioning within the room to keep it at the best temperature level. Stark mumbled with a suspicious look. Besides, mixed bloods at this level of strength would be unaffected by any sort of change in temperature unless it was very severe. "It's empty. This is probably how he has been sneaking out to conduct investigations," Stark said with a look of realization. "It's past 11 p.m. What would he be up to by this time?" Stark mumbled with a tone of interest. In a few moments he began walking away. Stark avoided everyone's eyes and found his way out of the household before making a turn around the house. He arrived in front of the area where Gustav's room windows could be seen above on the second floor and stared at the one that was opened. Stark traced the open window with his eyes turning to stare at a particular direction in the sky. Golden scales began to appear on his body as he bloated and began to increase in size. His clothes got ripped off as another neck grew out the side of his shoulder that was also transforming like the rest of his body to look like a beastly figure. A pair of wings 2 times bigger than ancient aeroplanes' wings sprouted out of his back as he grew to over 16 feet in height. Powerful energy spread forth across the place as he finished his transformation. What could be seen here was a massive golden scales draconic with 2 long heads for horns and blazing yellowish eyes with hints of red. Stark's transformation looked so majestic and domineering that Von's transformation in his past fight with Gustav could not be compared to this. Spreading his wings out, he flapped hard, causing wind to spread across the place as he almost instantly disappeared into the southwest part of the sky. Gustav was currently standing at the top of a bridge-like rail track, suspended several thousand feet in the air. He squatted on this rail area in midair despite it having thin metal poles, and brought out the sniper-like weapon from his storage device. First location is approximately 40 miles from here. Gustav mumbled as he placed the weapon on a standing railing area and locked his finger around the trigger. God Eyes has been activated. Chapter 877 shooting at the target's first location is approximately 40 miles from here. Gustav mumbled as he placed the weapon on a standing railing area and locked his finger around the trigger. God Eyes has been activated. His sight zoomed in by several kilometers in a matter of seconds. It passed through structures and multiple tall buildings up ahead. It passed through some business buildings and some residential areas, yet it kept phasing forward till it went beyond a small forest area. Gustav stopped his sight from zooming in any further after it arrived within a household where the family were already asleep in their various rooms. He moved his sight from the living room to the upper floor, where he could spot 3 people sleeping in 3 separate rooms at first. Then he moved his sight further to the left where the last room was located. Here he could see 2 people sleeping on the same bed together, a male and a female. It was obvious that they were husband and wife, and most likely the parents of the ones sleeping in the other rooms. Fortunately, they were not engaging in any triggering activities, just as Gustav hoped. Gustav proceeded to move the weapon he was holding onto slightly, pointing it precisely in the direction he wanted it to head in. His sight was focused on the neck area of the man, who was sleeping right beside his wife. Gustav's hand glowed with bluish energy that was transferred towards the weapon, which in turn glowed a little. It has to be hard, but at the same time gentle. Gustav said internally as he slowly pressed his finger against the trigger. Fwun, a compressed firing sound rang out as the sniper-like weapon shot out a small yellowish-shaped item with immense speed. It almost instantly traveled across the 40 miles and passed through all the obstacles along the way effortlessly. Fwaya, the man, suddenly woke up as he felt a sting on his neck. He reached out to touch his neck, but besides the small sting that only lasted for an instant, he couldn't feel anything else. There was no blood oozing down his neck or anything. However, there was a visible small yellowish dot on the left side of his neck. Just as he was about to stand up to check a mirror, a wave of drowsiness hit him, and he fell back to the bed before passing out. In the next few seconds, the yellowish on his neck disappeared entirely. 1 down. 6 more to go, Gustav said internally as he deactivated God Eyes. He had just successfully planted an unknown item in one of his suspects, who happened to be a kilo-ranked mixed blood. The Vertigan man was a family branch head known as Moxitov, and was pretty strong, but Gustav had managed to get him due to good planning. Not only was he extremely far away, but the Vertigan also would not have been able to figure out what was going on because of the high-grade sedative added to the shot. This would make any victim fall asleep immediately, and every trace or sign that something had happened would have disappeared when they woke up the next morning. Gustav wasted no time in getting up after retracting his weapon and leaping off the sky rail. Hover has been activated. He activated hover in midair and flew across the city. Fwai, his figure generated whitish waves across the night sky as he blasted across the air. Gustav wanted to move as far as possible from the previous location due to the suppressed sound the weapon made after he fired it off previously. There were no MBO officials in Mycenite City, but there were Vertigan guards stationed all across the place in multiple locations. Despite the sound being suppressed, the ones patrolling that particular area would have caught on to it and begun heading in the direction of the sound. A few minutes later, Gustav arrived over 15 miles southwest of his initial location. God Eyes made Gustav capable of targeting anyone in the city from almost any point, but due to obstructions from structures or platforms, he would have to pick strategic locations. He knew too many obstructions would hinder the shots from getting through smoothly, no matter how strong the firing power of the weapon was, so he knew to pick the right spots. This time, Gustav settled on the top of a tower-like platform on a bridge. There was a big rift below that looked endless. This was a big crack on one side of the island. It made this particular location look a bit scary considering water couldn't be seen at the bottom, since it looked bottomless. Gustav squatted and mounted the sniper-like weapon once more while activating God Eyes. God Eyes has been activated. The night turned clearer in his line of sight as he began zooming in, 27 miles away. This time the distance between Gustav's current location and the location he was aiming for was significantly shorter. His sight kept zooming past several structures till it arrived in a neighborhood-like area with multiple houses around. A similar scene to what had earlier played out. The only differences were the location, number of people in this particular household, and the target. Gustav was able to successfully hit the target once more, smoothly downing the second one. He wasted no time in moving away from this location, as well as he pictured the map of the city in his head. Gustav didn't keep God Eyes active at every point, so he had to make use of his perception to move around, as well as a GPS. Over 30 minutes later, Gustav was floating in midair on the far west area of the island. He was so much at the edge that the ocean surrounding the island was just right beneath him. This won't work unless I find a platform that is at least 3,000 feet high around here, Gustav muttered as his sight zoomed out of a particular location. Looks like he'll have to take this shot in midair. Chapter 878, raising an alarm. Looks like he'll have to take this shot in midair. After saying this, Gustav flew higher into the sky, ascending across the air with the weapon in his grasp. After reaching up to 3,000 feet in the air, Gustav paused and held out the sniper-like weapon right in front of him. God Eyes has been activated. His sight zoomed in heavily into the distance as he aimed the weapon forward with a steady grasp. 32 miles. Gustav said internally as his sight kept zooming in. For several seconds, his sight closed in on a mountain region. 3 different mountains side by side could be seen, as well as series of buildings erected on them. Gustav aimed for the first building on the tallest mountain of all 3, which was positioned right in the middle. There were several people in guards' outfits positioned around the place. Some patrolled up and down the mountains, but they had no idea that they were being watched from over 30 miles away. Gustav looked inside the building he was aiming for and could see a few people already asleep. However, the person he was targeting happened to be missing from this household. Gustav began to look from household to household, since he couldn't find this person in the expected location. The person who happened to be the leader of this family branch was nowhere to be found amongst the multiple buildings erected across the 3 mountains. Gustav felt he spotted something and looked higher up the mountain. There was a faint speck of light that shone from up there for a split instant. He looked further up at the highest part of the mountain in the middle and found someone seating in a cross-legged position atop it. This was the person Gustav was looking for, family branch head Kodorio. He seemed to be channeling his bloodline as he sat up there because there would be an occasional red glow in the middle of his chest area. He's awake. This will make things a bit tougher, Gustav thought as he aimed for the neck area of this man. Kodorio was a betranked mixed blood, so this had made things entirely more difficult than before since he wasn't asleep, although being in a state where he was channeling his bloodline made him a little more vulnerable, but nevertheless, he was still conscious. Being asleep raised the success rate of this operation by a whole lot. For all Gustav knew, he could even get spotted before he took the shot. Beta ranks were no ordinary mixed bloods since they were just at the rank before Alpha. Alpha rank was a whole new godlike rank entirely, but with Beta being 1 rank away, they would be able to floor any lower-ranked mixed blood easily. And Gustav was no exception. He would have to make sure things went swimmingly, or he would be found out. Gustav's eyes focused on the neck area of this branch leader, and finally, he took the shot. Bang, bang, ooh. Instead of once, Gustav took the shot twice. Thwaiawai, 2 yellowish-colored lines cut through the air at immense speed, following after each other, and arriving at the target of 30 miles in almost an instant. Gaiyu, an invisible circular barrier, suddenly appeared around Kodorio as the first shot arrived before him. Cracks appeared around it, but the yellowish that which was the item shot out was stopped right before him. In the next instant he opened his eyes and looked forward with a sharp gaze. But then the second shot arrived almost in a split instant after the first shot was stopped. It slammed into the exact area with the first one breaking through the barrier and moving towards Kodorio's neck. Swai, his hand moved with lightning speed as he raised it slightly with index and thumb spread. He caught the small yellowish item right before it could make contact with his neck and raised it slightly to stare at it. He gritted his teeth in annoyance as the yellowish item dissolved into a small cream on his fingertips. It came from just as he opened his mouth. Thumb! A yellowish streak suddenly appeared right in front of him, just an inch away from his mouth that was opened. He tried to close his mouth back in time, but it was too late. Bang! He felt a force slam into the back of his throat in the next instant, sending him flying a few feet backwards. Its presence and visibility were masked. Kodorio voiced out with a shocked look as the shot dissolved into his throat. Just how skilled is this culprit that he was able to mask even the bullet? He thought internally as he staggered slightly after regaining his balance. But he's not here to kill me. I will find him and make him confess his intentions. Kotario voiced out as a massive pressure phased out of him, causing the mountains to quake slightly. Everyone in the vicinity began to wake up as they felt the powerful pressure he exuded. They could already tell that something was wrong and began to make their way toward him. However, just as Kotario was about to transform and take flight into the sky to chase after the culprit, he felt a wave of dizziness overtake him. Those who had just arrived at his position after getting the alarm saw him staggering and trying to keep his eyes open. They had no idea what had happened, and seeing him in such a state made them think it was an ambush, but there was no one in the vicinity. Before falling to the ground on the mountain top, Kotario pointed in a direction. In the next instant, he had fallen asleep. Branch leader, one of them voiced out while checking his vitals on the ground. He found out that Kotario was not hurt in any way. He just fell asleep. The culprit must have gone that way. Another one of them voiced out as he pointed in the same direction Kotario had pointed at before he passed out. Chapter 879, tracking Gustav. They were about 12 that had arrived at the summit, and they understood this as well. In the next instant, they began to transform into a draconic form with black scales. Flapping their wings, they lifted off into the sky and began to fly in the direction of Gustav. They felt whoever the culprit was, they would be no easy foe since they were able to get the branch leader. However, they had no idea that the shot came from over 30 miles away. They would never expect that the culprit would be that far away, so while they flew across the air, their focus was mostly a few miles ahead beyond their territory. Gustav, who was over 30 miles away, had already begun to move away from the instant he successfully made the third shot. The supergrade sedatives within the bullet were enough to put him down despite being a beta rank, so long as it managed to dissolve on his skin. Gustav wasn't so sure if it would work when they were in their draconic form, since they had won the toughest defense in the world with their lineage bloodline. However, so long as they were in human form it would work, which was why going on this operation in the middle of the night was the best course of action. Gustav had expected one or two situations where his target would be awake, but at the very least, since it was late at night, he expected their guard to be down. That was the case for Kotario too, even though he was awake and channeling his bloodline. As Gustav flew across the air towards a different location, heading towards the east, he felt fluctuations in the air. VRRHHHHHHH. He spread out his perception across the place, making it cover a radius of up to 10 miles. Gustav could sense two figures flying towards his direction from the west area. Over there, I can sense his presence. he heard a masculine voice coming from the same direction. God Eyes has been activated. Gustav turned towards the direction where he could sense them as he activated God Eyes. Guards. They must have followed me from the previous location, Gustav said internally as he spotted these figures in his line of sight. These weren't the same people from the Triple Mountainous area. Gustav guessed these guards must have been patrolling not too far from where he took the shot earlier, but he must have missed them because they were probably out of his perception range. The issue now was these guards were very good at tracking, having followed him to this point despite hearing the shot from outside his range of perception. And even now, they were about to catch up to him, since they were moving way faster. Gustav would increase his speed, but based on what he had heard from the dialogue between both guards, he could tell that they would be able to pinpoint his location even better if he decided to use more speed, and then this would turn into a midnight chase. He didn't want to risk raising more alarms, which would make more guards join in. Gustav looked down and could see he was above an area of tall buildings. Flying towards one of them, he landed at the top and stared at a square-shaped electrical appliance by the side. Gustav looked around the rooftop and could see others like that placed in specific spots of the rooftop. Cognitive concealment has been activated. SS. His presence disappeared as he moved towards the middle of the rooftop. He activated one of his original bloodline abilities, causing his body to start making small squirming sounds as he morphed. In the next few moments, Gustav had transformed into the same look as one of these square-shaped appliances. Gustav spread his perception across the place after taking this inanimate form and could sense the two guards approaching this particular location, even though his presence had disappeared. There was no doubt that their tracking ability was top-notch. The flapping of wings turned louder, and in the next few moments, two gigantic-looking draconic figures with ash-colored scales could be seen approaching this 200-story tall building. They landed right atop it and transformed back into their human form. Gustav had no idea how they did it, but even after going from massive back to their human form, they were still dressed in their black and silver-colored guard robes. The transformation didn't affect their wares in any way. The presence vanished around here. I believe the culprit should be hiding somewhere, the one on the left voiced out. They might be able to conceal themselves. We should use the overseer device, the one on the right stated with a feminine voice. Just as one of them brought out what looked like a brownish stone, a call came in through the communication device placed behind their left ear. There seems to have been a disturbance at Branch Leader Kodorios area, the female guard stated. The direction pinpointed leads to the position where we heard the shot. It's over 30 miles away. Could the culprit be responsible for the situation at Branch Leader Kodorios area? While they spoke, Gustav began to sense another presence approaching this particular area. Another one? Gustav was surprised that another draconic figure was approaching from the south. However, unlike this two, he could sense this one was faster and stronger, since it carried a more domineering presence. Gustav wasn't really bothered because, unlike before, he could maintain transforming into an inanimate object for longer than 2 minutes. He only hoped they'd leave soon since they were starting to link him to the place he targeted. Let's use the overseer device. It will make it faster to find the culprit. The female guard spoke again as she stretched it forward. Just as she was about to activate it, both of them sensed the presence approaching from the south. Someone's coming, the male guard voiced out as he looked up. Fwai. In the next instant, a two-headed golden-scaled draconic figure could be seen approaching from the south. Chapter 880 Stark's arrival even in the dark night. The clouds parted ways due to the incredible speed of this creature as its golden scales glowed and gave off a majestic aura. Isn't that? Both guards' eyes widened in surprise the instant they spotted the draconic figure. Bam! It landed a few feet in front of them and began transforming back into human form. Family head, Stark? The male guard voiced out loudly. Not the family head yet, haha. Stark laughed lightly as he approached them. Both guards greeted him with respect, as their faces still shone with disbelief. What are you two doing around these parts? Patrolling? Stark asked as he arrived in front of them. We were tracking a presence we felt. The female guard began explaining everything to Stark and what had happened so far. Gustav, who was still in the inanimate form, was slowly starting to reach his limit after maintaining it for over 10 minutes. He reckoned he could still hold out for longer, but with Stark arriving on the scene, he had no idea how his presence would affect the whole situation. He'd rather not have to keep maintaining this form, as it was pretty dangerous to stay this way for too long. Oh, I see, Stark voiced out after listening to their narration. We were just about to scan this place with an overseer device, the female guard added, while stretching her hand forward with the brownish stone in her grasp. There is no need to bother with that. I was the one at the location where you heard the sound of a shot earlier, Stark voiced out with a dismissive tone, while grabbing onto the device. That was you? Both guards voiced out in shock. Yes, that was me. As you can see, I'm also right here. I was busy with an exercise that has to do with the channeling of my bloodline, so those sounds came from my body, Stark added. Both guards looked at themselves for a split instant with contemplative expressions before looking back at Stark, whoever or whatever the situation at the other branch. It must have been someone else, so you two are searching in the wrong place, Stark stated once more. All right, family head, since that was you, well, check somewhere else, the female guard voiced out first. You two do that. Keep up the good work. I'll continue with my exercise in the meantime, Stark said with a smile. Both of them nodded respectfully and turned around while transforming. Don't forget this. Stark 3, the brownish-looking stone-like device across the air. One of them caught it in midair, before flapping their wings and flying off into the distance. Stark sighed in relief after they left and turned around. They're gone. You don't have to keep hiding, Stark voiced out while staring at a particular part of the rooftop. There was no response for some time even after saying that. Come on, I know you're here. They would have too if they had used the device, but not to worry, everything is okay now, Stark said while walking towards the middle of the rooftop. He arrived in front of one of the square-shaped appliances on the rooftop and looked down at it. I'm 99% sure this is you, disguising, Stark voiced out while staring at the appliance. Looks like the 1% wins, a voice was heard from behind. Huh? Stark quickly turned around with a startled look and saw Gustav standing right behind him. I was wrong? How did he creep up on me so fast? Stark wondered internally with an astonished look as he stared at Gustav, then turned to the side, slightly to stare at the appliance once again. He then noticed one of the square-shaped appliances positioned a few feet behind was no longer there. It turned out he had missed Gustav. Why are you here? Gustav asked with an unbothered expression. Ouch, no thanks for saving me, Stark, or anything, Stark voiced out with a wry smile. I would have handled it, but yeah, thanks, Gustav said. I don't doubt that, hee. You see, I've been following you all night, Stark said with a chuckle while walking in a funny way around Gustav. That's impossible, Gustav said while his eyebrows creased. He didn't sense Stark's presence in the slightest. Well, I kept my distance because from what I know about you, I'd get caught if I followed too closely. But even with keeping my distance, I was still able to follow you easily, Stark explained. Gustav's eyebrows furrowed even more after hearing that. If Stark had been following, then he must have seen everything that had happened, and Gustav wanted to keep all of his plans private. I know whatever you're up to is for the sake of getting the emblem back, so I don't mind. You just have to be careful. They would have been able to identify you with the overseer device, which would in turn cause problems and affect your work, Stark said with a smile. How was he able to keep his distance while following me? Gustav wondered. All right, thanks, you should head back now. I am not done, Gustav said while turning around to head towards the edge of the rooftop. Wait. Let me come with you, Stark said while quickly following after Gustav. No, Gustav refused bluntly. I can help. Something like this might happen again, but I'll be able to keep the guards off you. Stark voiced out quickly before Gustav could leap off the edge. You're just going to keep following me even if I said no one you? Gustav mumbled while his eyes dropped. Yes. I mean no. Stark chuckled lightly with a wry look as he responded. I can be of help, he added. Asterisk, sigh, asterisk, all right. Gustav sighed before leaping off the edge. Hover has been activated. Gustav blasted across the dark sky with speed, as Stark also transformed into his draconic form. An immense pressure radiated across the environment as he flapped his massive wings, flying after Gustav and catching up with ease. Chapter 881 See all abilities. An immense pressure radiated across the environment as he flapped his massive wings, flying after Gustav and catching up with ease. Gustav could not understand why Stark gave off so much pressure with his draconic transformation when he was just a first step Echo rank. With the way his draconic transformation looked with 2 heads, 6 eyes, and golden, glowing scales, Gustav felt. Just like him, Stark would most likely be able to battle mixed bloods at higher-ranked bloodlines and still win. No one still understood how he achieved Echo rank at age 18, and was also a 2-headed since 7 years ago. Stark was happy as he followed by Gustav's side flying alongside him. He had always wanted to do something like this, and now he had the chance. He wondered how Gustav was able to fly without wings, but he didn't know Gustav would run out of time soon and have to use transformation to take the form of a winged mixed breed. How were you able to keep following me despite being out of my range of perception? Gustav asked. Oh, that. It's the same way. I found out you were not in your room. Stark responded with a deep voice that had been affected by his transformation. I believe there were no cameras or spying devices in my room. I checked. Gustav furrowed his brows as he voiced out. No, there are none. Stark quickly responded to the misunderstanding. I have a see-all ability. Even right now, one of my eyes is fixed on a part of the island far behind us. Another of my eyes see over 50 miles ahead of us. I am only making use of 2 to scan around us as we fly, Stark explained. A see-all ability, Gustav mumbled. Like God eyes. Only that this one seems to work in a different way, and might be better, Gustav thought. He also recalled Alevra had a similar eye ability to God eyes, but God eyes seemed to be better, unlike this particular see-all ability Stark uses, seeing from that far away, and even seeing behind him. This definitely made it better than God eyes. Don't worry, I'll never use it in the household to invade your privacy, unless I feel something out of place. I was worried this night, which was why I used it, Stark assured Gustav after he saw his contemplative. Fine, Gustav responded as bat-like wings sprouted out of his back. Stark was taken aback for an instant as Gustav's flight speed suddenly increased exponentially. FYI, with a flap of his wings, he gave himself and Stark a distance of several thousand meters. A race? Be ready to eat the clouds behind me. Stark chuckled as he also flapped his wings and blasted forward with immense speed, despite the size of his figure. He almost instantly caught up with Gustav as they flew towards the northeast of the island. About 15 minutes later, Gustav stood on a purple branch tree that was over 1,400 meters tall. This was the tallest tree on the island, and they called it the Athraia. It was a strange type of tree that not only gave off an energy across the island that benefited bloodline channeling for mixed bloods, but it also generated a strange type of electrical current. This made it unapproachable for a lot of people, but even with that, it was a treasure on the island, and people were not allowed to approach recklessly. There's a few guards in this area, Stark muttered. You'll handle it right, Gustav voiced out. Sure, I will, Stark responded. Gustav brought out the sniper-like weapon which he had just used several minutes ago. Before arriving here, they had visited a different location, and Gustav had successfully hit the 5th target. Now he was targeting the 6th and last family branch head of them all. This was not a safe spot since the area was well guarded, but this was the best place to take a shot from because of the next family branch head location. Gustav activated God, eyes once more zooming in across several 10 miles. An exalted platform above a region with a lot of fog could be seen. Gustav aimed properly at this area, where different houses could be seen. His eyes focused on the second to the last house on the 5th row of structures aligned. His sight moved downwards, going below the house, and he spotted a figure underground, laying on what seemed to be a mat. It was like Gustav already expected this, so he was well prepared despite the fact that the shot would have to travel underground. Seeing a yellowish-colored-looking item, thrice the size of the projectiles he had been shooting since appeared in his hand, and Gustav proceeded to put it into the weapon. His hands glowed with a blue light as he passed power into the weapon and aimed it at the figure once more. Here goes. He proceeded to pull the trigger. Boom. Thwack, the yellowish streak tore through the air instantly, as well as every single obstacle on the way. As it arrived at the target, it instantly phased through the structure and pierced into the target's neck. The branch leader instantly opened his eyes the moment contact was made, but he was too slow. He touched his neck and felt the liquid, brought his hand to the front of his face, and could see part of the yellowish melted projectile on his hand. What the? His eyes turned dizzy and he passed out in the next instant. This branch head was significantly weaker than the rest, being only at kilo rank, so Gustav found it easier to target him. They're coming this way. Stark alerted Gustav of the guards. Gustav backed himself into the tree, covered himself with the branches, and activated cognitive concealment. He also turned into the same color with the tree. Despite the fact that the tree was sending out electric currents, he remained unaffected and hid in it. Chapter 882. Using Stark to achieve some objectives. Who's there? A loud masculine voice was heard from the ground area as multiple footsteps approached the bottom of the tree. Stark moved a bit forward, dropping from the end of a branch. His body descended from the air, and he landed a few feet in front of the tree trunk. The guards who were surrounding the tree paused in their tracks as they spotted him. Family head Stark, their eyes widened as they voiced out. Once again, not yet, haha. Stark chuckled as he corrected them. He didn't like hearing people call him the family head. What are you doing here? One of them asked with a surprised tone. Just busy with some training of mine. Is there any problem? He asked while raising one of his eyebrows. We just heard a disturbance from over here, so we came to check. One of them answered with a respectful tone. Oh, yeah, that was me. Nothing to worry about, Stark stated with a smile. Okay, family head, but you need to be careful. There have been a lot of disturbances this night. We can escort you back to the residence for safety. Another one of the guards voiced out. Oh, not to worry, I am fine. When I am done here, I will head back, Stark said with a dismissive tone. They nodded in response. We will keep searching for the culprit responsible for the disturbances, the guards voiced out as they prepared to leave. As for the disturbances, I could help search for the culprit, Stark proposed. We can't disturb family head with our duties. We will handle it ourselves, a guard voiced out. It is no big deal. I have the see-all ability. I can check every nook and cranny of the island in a short duration of time, Stark said as his eyes glowed with yellowish and red light. The guards waited for a bit, and after about a minute Stark's eyes dimmed, returning to normal. I have checked everywhere. There is no suspicious figure. Whoever you guys are looking for must have already escaped, Stark voiced out. All right then, family head, please be safe, they voiced out before leaving the vicinity. Stark smiled after they were gone and leapt upwards. He jumped from tree to tree before arriving where Gustav was hiding. Did you truly scan the entire island with your sight? Gustav asked. Of course not. What's the point when the culprit is right here? Stark laughed lightly in response. But can you truly do that? Gustav asked with a tone of curiosity. Yes, it's a rare ability that no one in the family has possessed for ages. I can scan every nook and cranny of this island in a matter of seconds, so if any suspicious figure ever truly appeared, they would not be able to escape my eyes, Stark explained. So, if you lots had been around when the emblem was stolen, you'd have caught the culprits? Gustav asked. Yes, they knew to pick the right time to act, Stark added. In a flash, noon had arrived. Gustav had been in his room all day since he arrived back at the residence at midnight with Stark. He had managed to complete his objective by night, so right now he was staying indoors after setting up his monitoring system. What Gustav had planted within the 6 family branch heads was a kind of technological implant that would give an imagery of their location every time. Right in front of Gustav at the moment was a massive holographic screen split in 6. These 6 holographic screens displayed not just the locations of the 6 family branch heads he targeted the previous night, but also displayed footage of the environment around them. This had gone beyond tapping a certain location. This would display everything they were up to at the moment, and also send audio feedbacks to Gustav. The only issue now was Gustav would have to wait because his acts the previous night had alarmed the entire island. Amongst all of them he targeted, family branch leader Coterio was the only one that remembered what had happened the previous night. The others had forgotten that they were shot at since they were not as powerful as him. However, even though they forgot, they still felt suspicious after hearing what happened to Coterio. They had begun conducting investigations and examined his body. The other leaders also decided to join in this examination, just in case. On the bright side, the implant couldn't be spotted by any medical device on this island unless they decided to take them to the best medical research center in the world. Gustav only just had to wait in the meantime till the whole thing blew over. He recalled he also had to find a way to get the others in the main family to consume the implant as well. There were some he could still watch while being in the household, but some had duties that made them go out a lot, so he had to make them consume the implant. So had be able to easily spy on them when they were away. The problem with this investigation was that there were too many suspects, and this was due to the number of people in the Vertigan family. After some time, Gustav finally decided to come out of his room. Surprisingly, he bumped into Stark in the hallway. It seemed Stark was coming to find him. You haven't had breakfast, Stark voiced out the moment he arrived in front of Gustav. However, Gustav remained silent for a few moments as his face displayed a contemplative expression. I'm going to need you to help me with something, Stark, Gustav voiced out. Okay, you know you can ask me anything, Stark said with a slightly surprised expression. Good. Follow me, Gustav said while walking forward. Stark turned around and quickly followed after Gustav with an excited expression. The entire day went by in a flash, and it was nightfall again. At this time, Gustav was sitting in his room, and now the holographic screen had become even larger. Chapter 883. Underwater mission. Instead of 6 split screens, it was now 12. These 12 holographic screens each displayed the surroundings of a person. Some were asleep, and some were still wide awake, but from the looks of things, all of them were in a bedroom. 6 of these screens displayed the branch leaders Gustav had targeted the previous night, and the other 6 were that of people in the main family that Gustav suspected. Stark is a good asset, Gustav mumbled as he recalled just how Stark had helped him today. He had made use of Stark's help to make the others he was suspicious of in the household consume the technological implant he needed to spy on them. If Gustav had tried it his way, it would have been quite difficult to achieve, but with Stark being the next head of the family, all he had to do was visit them one after the other with a cup of tea to discuss. The cup of tea had the technological implant in soluble form within. All of them were suspicious, since this wasn't something Stark would usually do, but they had no choice. The moment they consumed the cup of tea, Gustav practically got what he wanted, so nothing else mattered. They had fallen into his hands at this point, and every activity they engaged in would be monitored by him easily. The only problem was Gustav couldn't stay here and watch all day, but it wasn't really an issue because all their activities would be recorded, and he could do a playback the moment he was back in his room. Later in the middle of the night, Gustav moved out of the household once more. This time, he made sure everyone was asleep or in a relaxed state first before moving out to prevent what happened with Stark the last time from happening again. He could still be caught sneaking out, since not everyone was sleeping at the moment. Uncle Bela was channeling his bloodline in one of the household training rooms, and even some other uncles and aunts that were busy working on one thing or the other in their rooms were still awake. However, Gustav was more cautious than the last time, so he wouldn't be caught by even the guards. After a few minutes, he was flying across the night sky in the city. The city mostly slept at night, unlike burning sands, so it was rare to see any activity on the ground. However, Gustav's mission this night was not on the ground. Partial Flame's Death Ace transformation has been activated. Big bat-like wings sprouted out of Gustav's back as his speed suddenly increased by a whole lot. He generated waves across the sky as he flew towards the north area of the island. Many minutes later, Gustav had arrived at the edge of the island. Since it's not on land, then I can't rule out the possibility of it being in the water, Gustav said internally as he floated several thousand feet in the air and stared at the ocean below. This might take some time. I should probably use the drug, Gustav said internally as he activated his storage device and made a bluish pill appear in his hand. This would make it possible for him to breathe underwater for the next 24 hours. Gustav could stay underwater for several hours without this, but he didn't know how long he would take scouring the surrounding of the island underwater, so he needed to use this. New quest has been issued. A notification suddenly popped up in his line of sight before he could consume the drug. Continue your search for the emblem underwater without the use of any underwater breathing drug. Gustav squinted his eyes as he saw this notification. Is the system purposely trying to make things hard for me? Gustav wondered internally, but there was no answer from the system. It had been silent for days like it usually was sometimes. Rewards, punishment for failure. The punishment for failing was enough for Gustav to put any thoughts of deciding not to complete the quest aside. TCH, Gustav proceeded to keep the drug back in his storage device after scanning through. The wings on his back receded, and he began to fall from the air. Fwai'i, his black outfit made small flapping sounds as his body dropped quickly and landed inside the ocean. Tum, his body descended into the depths of the ocean as he activated God's eyes. Even during the day, the ocean underwater was always dimly lit, and now that it was nighttime, it was impossible to see anything. The surroundings became clearer the moment Gustav activated God eyes. He descended deeper into the ocean while also swimming forward with force, causing waves to be generated underwater. A few fishes would be spotted occasionally as he swam forward around the island, but the waves his body generated would push them all away. It looked like he was even swimming faster than they were. Gustav kept scanning the entire premises with both God's eyes and his perception as he swam from place to place. Occasionally he would come into contact with structures from the ocean floor shaped weirdly. Some looked like buildings that had been demolished because a little bit of their shape could be seen. Gustav would swim around them and scan them, but still, he didn't find anything. He would also make sure to scan the rocky walls of the island edges underwater, but even after 2 hours of moving around, he still hadn't found anything. The ocean was quite dangerous in these parts, and it was said that lots of underwater mixed breeds were super strong. It wasn't easy to defeat them, and they were said to be more dangerous than mixed breeds on land. Gustav knew of this info, so he made sure to move cautiously, and since he could see from miles away, it made things easier. Gustav once more approached another demolished-looking platform underwater. Chapter 884. Getting swallowed, Gustav once more approached another demolished-looking platform underwater. At this point, he was curious as to why some of the structures were erected underwater only to be destroyed. What could have destroyed them, or why were they built in the first place when the people from the Vertigons were supposed to be more knowledgeable in the aspect that underwater construction was not a good idea in this part of the world? Gustav reached down further and stood on the rubble. He could see woods, tiles, and different construction materials. He also spotted a massive metallic-looking cross stabbed into the ocean floor. What were they building? A church? Gustav wondered internally after spotting the massive cross. He could sense the top of the cross emitting faint energy, so he moved closer and inspected it. A ruby? Gustav spotted the small red stone embedded into the top area of the cross. It was barely visible. The visible area made the ruby look like a dot, as part of it was covered up by the metallic upper part of the cross. Gustav reached out and touched it, dipping his fingers into the small hole the ruby was embedded in and pulling the metal that was covering it up to the sides. He easily ripped parts of the metal away, revealing the complete look of the ruby, which was almost as large as an adult's palm. The faint energy it emitted turned even stronger after the entirety of it was revealed. Gustav was about to use God Eyes to scan the ruby when a tremor suddenly happened on the ground floor of the ocean. He was barely able to react in time before immense waves thrashed across the place and an unprecedented suction force came from underneath. The whole rubble at the bottom of the ocean from the desolate structure blasted across the place as the ground floor opened up, and a massive bottomless-looking hole swallowed up Gustav's figure from below. Grrhh. The dark hole was so massive that it had covered as much ground as the eyes could see on the ocean floor, and the suction force coming from it had allowed it to swallow up everything in the vicinity, Gustav included. Gustav found himself getting pulled into this dark hole fiercely, with the strong waves trying to render him unable to stabilize himself. Although the waves mixed with rubble were blinding to the eyes, Gustav was able to spot massive white-looking spikes at the far ends of the dark hole. It turned out that this dark, bottomless-looking hole was actually the mouth of an underwater mixed breed that had suddenly appeared out of nowhere and swallowed everything up. The hole, which happened to be its mouth, had closed up after swallowing everything in the vicinity, causing the entire place to turn dark. As Gustav found himself being dragged towards the digestive system of this creature along with the rubble and many other fishes, he closed his eyes. Temperature manipulation has been activated. Steam drifted out of his nostrils and mouth as it slightly hung open. Frost began to spread across the place as the waves all across the place began to freeze up. The number of waves thrashing about the place was similar to the size of a river, and everything was turning into frost in a matter of seconds, with everything freezing up and turning solid. The heavy waves throwing Gustav across the place stopped, giving him the chance to leap upwards. The rubble and different parts of the demolished structure beneath were getting trapped in large ice blocks due to the ability Gustav had just used. This also stalled things within the body of the creature, delaying its digestive process. Gustav stood atop a frozen platform above and looked around. This creature was practically quarter the size of the island, but Gustav could see the grotesque and slimy-looking walls of its internal structure. The cross. Gustav looked around for the cross and couldn't find it. He noticed it had gotten buried deep down underneath all the frost. It was hundreds of feet below where he was currently standing on and close to getting melted down and digested. Even though the frost had slowed down the creature's digestive process, it didn't completely stop it. So if Gustav didn't do something right now, the cross as well as the ruby would get digested in a matter of seconds. Gustav looked around with God Eyes still activated speedily. There, he muttered as he stared at his 2-0 clock. Tuish, he leapt towards that direction with immense speed as massive bat wings sprouted out of his back. Power boost has been activated. He squinted his eyes as his fist lit up with a golden glow, and his right arm began transforming. It grew twice as large, becoming even more muscular as spikes appeared around it, and it turned a bit silvery. The instant he arrived in front of the internal wall of this creature, he sent his fist hurling forward with intensity. Boom! A massive collision rocked the entire place as Gustav's fist tore through this creature's internal wall and kept flying through. Thrya, Pukrol blood, an unknown liquid goo jetted out like a fountain as a loud shriek of pain reverberated across the ground floor of the ocean. Gustav didn't stop flying with his fists stretched forward as he kept tearing through the internal meaty wall of the creature, which was thicker than 40 walls joined together. The whole place was trembling as the creature trashed around due to the pain, but Gustav didn't change his trajectory, once since he was unaffected by gravitational force due to flight. He finally arrived on the other end of the wall after successfully tearing a hole in this creature's internals. Ba-dump, 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 a massive light pinkish-looking meat of flesh with grayish tub-like things connected to it could be spotted the instant Gustav arrived on the other side. It was similar to the size of a mansion and kept pumping rapidly, causing a loud beating sound to reverberate across the entire place. Ultimate combination form has been activated. Gustav's body began transforming rapidly as he took the ultimate combination form, causing a dangerous energy to spread across the place. Chapter 885. Underwater map. The creature kept thrashing about after sensing danger within, trying to throw Gustav off course, but it was to no avail. After Gustav had taken the combination form, he blasted forward with immense speed. Boom! A loud noise reverberated across the bottom floor of the ocean as massive currents rose from the below to the top. Thwayai, a massive ripple spread across the place as a hole was blasted open at the top of the ocean. A massive beating meat lump flying out of it in the next instant. It generated fierce waves across the water that thousands of fishes were getting flung into the sky. It started raining fish due to this. The big beating lump of flesh, which was the size of a mansion, had a massive hole in it which blood was jetting out from like a fountain. A portion of the ocean had been dyed red with blood. It landed somewhere on the shore of the island up ahead with a massive thudding sound and rolled a little, thousands of feet beneath the ocean. Gustav floated above the massive body of a creature that was sinking after leaving a massive bloody hole on the side of its body. The creature was obviously dead, since Gustav had just blasted its heart out of its massive body. Its mistake was trying to consume someone like Gustav, even though it was quite a powerful creature. Anyone would know that no matter how powerful a creature is, there would always be vulnerability within. The water in this part of the ocean had been polluted by its blood and leaking organs, but since Gustav wasn't inhaling or breathing out, this wasn't a problem. He used God eyes to scan the features of the creature as it fell to the ocean floor. The creature had a horse-like head with a spider-shaped body, black and orange stripes all across, and was immensely large. Gustav floated down and flew back into the hole he had blasted through the creature's body. The frozen digestive area was defrosting already, so Gustav easily broke through and retrieved the cross that was almost digested earlier. He got back out of the body and swam away from this area. After getting quite a distance away from where the disturbance had happened earlier, Gustav dropped down to the ocean floor once more and stabbed the cross into it. He wasted no time in retrieving the ruby into his grasp, sensing that it might have attracted the presence of the last creature. It doesn't even emit that much energy. Why would it attract such a creature when it would get no benefit from consuming it? Gustav wondered as he activated God Eyes once more. God Eyes has been activated. Within the ruby, he could see some weird mechanics. It was no ordinary ruby, as some unknown runic had been crafted into it. Gustav studied the internals of the ruby for a while, and then proceeded to tap different parts of its outer structure. Triune light shot out of the ruby, forming a square-shaped holographic projection. Gustav scrutinized the projection that looked like a map. is that? Here underwater, Gustav said internally as he stared at the map. A few red dots could be seen, and by the far edge a part of the island was highlighted which was cut out since the dots on the map did not extend to that area. These dots, the one closest to me is at the location I just left, Gustav noticed. The next dot was several hundred kilometers northeast. Gustav already had suspicions of what these dots depicted, but he had to confirm. I should have tried taking the bloodline of the aqua tarantula. But it's so big, I don't know where to make contact with to activate acquisition. Gustav realized it might help since he was underwater, but there was no time for that right now. Boom! Current blasted underwater as waves spread forth from Gustav's figure while he dove forward at full speed. His body was moving and wriggling like a fish as he swam forward. With every wave of his arms, his body would be pushed several hundred feet forward. Of course, he wasn't as fast underwater as he was on land, but nevertheless, he was still quite quick. After many minutes, Gustav arrived at the next, and his suspicions were confirmed. There was a pile of rubble, as well as multiple fragments of a building scattered across the place. So it turns out everywhere marked on the map is an area where underwater buildings have been demolished, Gustav said internally as he looked around. He had bumped into several of them back when he started this underwater venture, but the last one was where he found the ruby. Gustav suspected it was some kind of checkpoint, but then he inspected the entire place and didn't find anything that could assist with the emblem investigation. What was the purpose of building them in the first place just to leave them demolished? Gustav still wondered. At this point, he wanted to head back to the main Vertigan residence to question them about this, since it would soon be daybreak. However, Gustav decided to check the rest of the dots on the map first. There are still about 7 of them. That would also complete half my underwater scan across the circumference of the island, Gustav thought. He would still take many more hours before he was done circling the entire island underwater. Gustav wasted no time in resuming his scan as he activated God Eyes once more and kept swimming forward. Are you sure? Atop what looked like a tower, 2 figures could be spotted, almost like they were in the clouds. One was a male who sat cross-legged on the platform, while the other was a female who stood right behind him with her head hung low in respect. Yes, master. It was reported just now that the signal went off. The lady responded with a respectful tone. I created a TikTok account, Timbic_. I made a few interesting videos concerning TBS, so make sure to check them out and follow for more interesting updates in the future. Chapter 886. Daybreak arrives, yes, master. It was reported just now that the signal went off. The lady responded with a respectful tone. What area? And is there any footage? The man, who had a backward C-shaped scar on his forehead, voiced out. There was a short footage before communication was interrupted by an aqua mixed breed. There is a high chance the intruder is no longer alive, the lady voiced out while taking a small circular device out. She moved to his front and placed it on the ground right before him. Truin, a slightly blurry holographic projection, shot out next, displaying underwater footage. In this footage, a human figure could be seen floating in front of a massive adult-sized cross that was stabbed into the ocean floor. The human figure underwater could not be seen clearly, and from the angle of the footage, it seemed like it was being recorded from the ocean floor as well. Then, all of a sudden, the sand on the ocean floor, as well as all the debris from the demolished building structure in the area, blasted across the place as a disturbance occurred. The only thing they were able to point out before the footage disappeared was everything was being pulled into a large hole by a suction force. The intruder definitely got swallowed up. But we don't want anyone snooping around the site areas. The man spoke after the holographic footage came to an end. What are your orders, master? She asked respectfully. I'm not taking any chances. Do a clean sweep of the perimeter across the site areas to confirm that no life form is snooping around, he voiced out with a solemn tone. Noted, Master, she answered while standing uprightly. Go with Fackle and use the tri-diver, he added while closing his eyes once more. As you wish, Master, she said before bowing slightly and walking towards the ledge of the tower top. She jumped off the massive sky-high building without batting an eyelid. There's nothing here to, Gustav said internally as he once more scanned the premises underwater, where rubble could be seen scattered around. Just one more location left. Gustav stared at the map, which displayed. He was currently at the second to the last location marked on the map. He estimated that with his current speed in the water, he would get there in about an hour. That stupid quest just had to be issued, Gustav nagged internally. He had gadgets and pieces of technological equipment that could help him move faster underwater, but because of the quest, he couldn't make use of any of them. He had swum to the surface half an hour back to inhale oxygen, since he had been underwater for over 8 hours already. Right now it was daybreak, but still quite early in the morning. He already knew this objective would take some time, so the day breaking didn't mean he would stop. It just meant he had to be more subtle and properly hide his presence, since activity all around the island would increase more due to time. Gustav began heading in the direction of the next marked location in the next instant. Occasionally he would zigzag underwater to dodge some obstacles protruding from the ocean floor or anything else floating across the place. Since it was now daytime, the ocean wasn't so dark as it was in the middle of the night. Rays from the sunlight penetrated the water, making the bottom of the ocean look a bit clearer. Not wanting to waste energy unnecessarily, Gustav deactivated God Eyes and continued swimming towards the next location while spreading out his perception. 30 minutes later, the ocean floor around here, covering over a 200 kilometers radius, has been leveled. A feminine voice was heard through a communication frequency as two figures floated above what looked like a dark hole underwater. It's thousands of feet lower than it's supposed to be. A masculine voice was heard next as these two figures in dark robes kept staring down at the hole. Scan for signs of life. The one with the feminine figure voiced out as she stretched out her left hand, which was blazing with a blue glow. Thrin, rays of light shot out from her arm into the hole and spread across the entire place. Beep, beep, beep. Despite being underwear, low beeping sounds could be heard for a few moments before stopping. The lady, who had some weird blue lines on her face, showed a look of shock before speaking. No signs of life, but there is a corpse of a sea mixed breed down there. She paused for a brief instant. As the light she shot out retracted. Pa! She snapped her fingers, and a small holographic projection appeared in front of both of them. It's a level 82 aqua tarantula mixed breed. She voiced out as the projection displayed an exact image of how the corpse of the creature was laying at the bottom of the hole. Level 82? The footage makes sense now. They like to burrow deep into the ocean floor and tend to attack their prey by swallowing them whole from underneath when the prey gets too close to the ocean floor. The other masculine figure voiced out. That's not the issue right now. Look here, she said while flipping the holographic projection to display a part of the creature. See the large hole on this side of its body. It was killed by someone, and I guess it's the same person who was caught on the footage, she stated with a look of suspicion. That's true, Phil, which means they might still be out there. His eyes widened slightly as he voiced out while staring at the holographic projection. And they're not weak either. We have to go after them right now, she said while swimming upwards with speed. H&M. He nodded and swam upwards as well. They both got into a bungalow-sized underwater vehicle that was floating upwards all this time before zooming off into the distance. Almost there. What's with the weird drop in temperature? Gustav said internally as he kept swimming forward. Chapter 887. The masked location almost there. What's with the weird drop in temperature? Gustav said internally as he kept swimming forward. The further he went, the lower the temperature underwater dropped. Surprisingly, despite the temperature reducing exponentially, this area underwater remained solid and didn't turn to frost. Gustav kept traveling towards the next point, and at this time he activated God Eyes after sensing structures up ahead. The terrain of the ocean floor had slanted in a diagonal format and was also further descending lower up ahead. Gustav's eyes peered further and noticed there was an underwater rock towards the southwest area up ahead, several 100 feet tall. At the top of this underwater rock that spans across several kilometers, a large circular-shaped structure with cracks and a missing roofing area could be seen atop it. This exact location was the same marker on the map. Gustav had finally arrived at the last location. The temperature had dropped to a very low point, and some areas on the ocean floor were whitish. The circular-shaped building that looked quite desolate also had whitish coloring at different spots. Gustav slowed his swimming down at this point and moved in the direction of the underwater rock. He swam up and landed directly by the side of the building. Gustav looked around, and he could see that within the building there were a lot of smashed pieces of tools, technology, and all sorts of things. It was difficult to tell exactly what it was one was looking at when they stared at the pile of rubble, but this place was practically similar to the other marked locations Gustav had been checking out earlier. The only difference was the building looked way more intact than the rest. Nevertheless, Gustav moved into the building and looked around while holding onto a pale, yellow card with hints of red. The circular building was larger than the size of a stadium, so he made sure to move to every nook and cranny of the area while holding the card. However, even with that, there was no response from the card, which meant this was yet another location where he had to rule out the presence of the emblem. Gustav brought out the ruby once more and stared at the map. Truly, this was the last location blinking on the map, and even the map ended at this particular location. Gustav spotted something while checking the map once more. It had been guised so perfectly that he didn't see it beforehand, but due to still having God Eyes activated while he stared at the map, he noticed this. There's another location underneath this one? Gustav thought with a look of astonishment. The last location on the map blinking with red light like the others had a very small red light, just like it blinking right underneath it. They were in sync, blinking at the same rate, but God Eyes had caught the one difference they had that would be missed by anyone who stared at it. One would definitely think it was just a single light blinking, whereas it was two. Gustav swam upwards a bit and looked down with God Eyes still activated. His sight peered into the ground atop this rock area, but he was unable to see any underground passageway at the top. Everything was solid for over 100 feet. Gustav was a bit confused about the situation, so he decided to swim further upwards to get a wider range of view using God Eyes. He finally spotted what seemed to be an entrance at the foot of the rock on the east side. There was a kind of pathway within the foot of the rock that extended further down into the ocean floor. Gustav swam towards the foot of the mountain and moved towards the area he had spotted the passageway within the rock. Landing right in front, one couldn't see any passageway or any signs that beyond the rocky covering there was a passageway. Gustav guessed there was most likely a kind of activation that was needed for the rocky covering to open up and reveal the doorway beyond. He inspected the outer rocky covering for some time, and even with God Eyes, he couldn't figure out how it was supposed to be bypassed. Gustav brought out the ruby once more and moved it closer to the rock to see if there'd be any reaction, but there was none whatsoever. Looks like I have no other option but to smash through it, Gustav thought after trying different approaches. He would rather not do this because he didn't know what to expect if he used a violent approach. Although he hadn't spotted any traps of the sort with God Eyes, from what he had noticed so far, God Eyes was limited underwater to a certain extent. Gustav's arms enlarged as he tightened his fist and slightly raised his right hand. He was ready to destroy the outer covering of the rock when his perception picked up on something. A fast-moving underwater vehicle headed in this direction from the south. Gustav's perception had picked up on it a few miles before it got to his precise location, but it had already closed in the distance by more than half in barely a few moments. He wanted to move towards a corner and hide, but the moment he turned around to stare in the direction of the underwater vehicle, a blue beam was already headed for his location. Fwai Gruklul waves thrashed about the place as Gustav moved as quickly as he could towards the side. Boom! A part of the beam slammed into his right side, sending him spiraling along with the harsh current generated from the blast. Bam! Gustav hit the rock behind, causing the entirety of it to tremble for a bit. He groaned a little as he tried stabilizing himself. By the time he managed to stabilize himself, the bungalow-sized underwater vehicle had already arrived in front of the rock. Another beam was shot out, and this time Gustav placed his hand on the rock, causing icicle-like rocks to shot out of it intensely and form a barrier in front of him. You're tuning into the Mystic Fist YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.